Part 44. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 441. Director Peter, are you leaving? The soldier of the Bear Country who was guarding the door stopped the car that was about to leave the blockade camp and asked the driver inside. The other party was not someone bribed by Medvedev Pharmaceuticals, but Director Peter did not show any abnormality on his face. His tone was the same as usual, and he replied, "Yes, I have something urgent to do and I have to leave first and come back later." "Well, please hand in the pass." Here Peter took out the pass he got when he came in and handed it to the other party. The guarding soldier was very committed to his duties and said, "Next, we will check and disinfect your car. These measures are all to prevent the virus from leaving the infected area. The blockade is easy to come in, but it is troublesome to go out." Okay, Peter did not resist. After all, he did not like those biological and chemical viruses. He only wanted the special samples in the box on the ground of the co-pilot. These were secretly collected by the survivors of the Institute for him to take away. The disinfection and inspection work was completed quickly. The soldier who was in charge of connecting with Peter saw the box on the ground of the co-pilot and asked, "What's in it?" Peter said naturally, "Oh, that's my research box, which is specially used to store research tools. Do you want to check it?" "Okay. Director Peter, please open the box." The soldier saw that the other party was not nervous and thought that it should be fine, so he was also polite and relaxed. Peter opened the box. All the things inside were incomprehensible to the soldier, and the soldier did not dare to check them one by one. After all, he also knew that research equipment was very expensive. So he looked into the box and confirmed that they were all equipment that he did not know the purpose of, and then said, "Okay, I will open the gate to let it go." "Thank you." Peter closed the research box, so that the original was at the bottom of the box and was blocked by other equipment, so naturally there was no clue. And he was also certain that the soldier would not touch the things in his box. The only problem that might be exposed was that the other party might ask Ivan for information. Fortunately, he passed the customs safely in the end. Peter stepped on the accelerator and left the blockade camp directly. A man with a higher military rank looked at the car that was going away, walked to the guard, and asked about the situation. "Is that Captain Peter's car?" "Yes. He said he had something urgent to do and had to leave temporarily." The man saw that the other party was Ivan's adjutant, saluted immediately and showed the inspection release form and passed to the other party for inspection. "I see, you continue to stand guard." The adjutant wrote down the content and left here. After speeding for nearly 200 kilometers, Peter stopped the car and entered the town. He rented a second-hand car there, and then returned 50 kilometers along the original route to the negotiation point he and another force agreed on. Who? Peter panted and came to the place designated by the other party. Seeing the other party who had been waiting for a long time, he immediately said, "Hey, is it necessary to put the location so far away from the road?" After getting off the car, he walked nearly 5 miles, crossed the forest and climbed to the middle of the mountain before reaching the meeting place. The man who came out from under the tree, accompanied by the sound of cicadas, was named Albert Wesker, an old acquaintance of Luo Guang. "It is safer to trade in the woods, and you should be glad that we agreed to this latest deal." Wesker smiled contemptuously and said, "You failed to hand in your pledge of allegiance the first 2 times. We are willing to give you a third chance, which is already very good." When had Peter ever been despised like this? But he could not refute the facts and could only hide his unwillingness in his heart. "So, did you bring your pledge of allegiance?" Wesker looked at the box in the other party's hand behind his sunglasses. "I have it." Peter protected the box in front of him and said, "But things have changed. I want to negotiate a new deal, and add a small request." The initial deal was that Wesker and his team provided resources, and he defected to the other party with the results of the research on the demon worm and the members of the entire Peskov Institute. but the institute was destroyed and the original plan was cancelled. After that, the deal became Peter to deal with the 2B.S.A.A.S, and then join them with the survivors of the institute. This request or deal was proposed by Wesker himself, without telling Excella. As a result, the other party failed again, and Excella, who knew that the situation had changed, put forward the current request, to get the demon worm sample, and then he would join Trinity Company alone. Peter did not intend to leave the blockade camp so soon at first, at least until he got the demon worm sample. But the company called to let him know that the matter had been exposed, and at the same time, his men secretly collected some demon worm samples and handed them over to him. In this case, what is he waiting for? It is the right choice to run away with the things. As for the researchers of the Peskov Institute who were monitored, it depends on them. Anyway, the company will definitely work hard to get those people out. Tell me, Wesker felt a little funny. He wanted to rob, but the other party couldn't stop him at all. It was just that he didn't act rashly before he saw the real thing. Peter said, "It's very simple. I want to be the first person in charge of this demon worm project." This was the plan at the beginning, but the other party couldn't bring the whole team over, so he couldn't get this treatment. Why? You failed twice and still boast, don't you know your own strength? Wesker's venomous tongue skills have also improved a lot. If the other party agreed immediately, Peter would still have doubts, but the other party's attitude now shows that the other party is seriously considering his conditions. But this is too hurtful to his self-esteem. He gritted his teeth and said, "This has nothing to do with me. If my people were not so anxious at the time, and I went back to study the demon worm, then there would be no such things later." This biochemical crisis was not in his plan. It can be said that it was this disaster that disrupted his plan and led to today's situation. Wesker didn't care who caused this situation. He also looked down on those who shirked responsibility. After all, he couldn't manage his own people well, so how could he let the other party be responsible for a project? Our company doesn't keep idlers. If you want to be the project leader, you have to fight for it with your own strength. Peter retorted, "Of course I have the ability, but after I joined Sanlian, those researchers would not listen to me as a newcomer and fully assist me, so I need this position to command others." Wesker didn't know whether the other party was really ignorant or a fraud. Does this kind of person who can't do without the help of others really have the ability? He has to question this. 1 month. What? Wesker said, "I'll give you 1 month. If there is no result, don't blame me for removing your position." Although he said so, he was just comforting the other party, because there was no project specifically studying the demon worm. He wanted the demon worm for his own research. And the person in charge of the project he was studying was naturally Wesker himself, and even Excella could not interfere. Because the other party did not agree immediately, but had reservations, Peter felt more credible, so he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Deal." Before the deal, I still need to inspect the goods. The more cautious Wesker was, the more at ease Peter was. He put the box on the ground, opened it, and took out the sample of the demon worm from the bottom layer. The demon worm is very tenacious and does not need to be refrigerated, so the demon worms in the 3 test tubes are very vigorous. Wesker confirmed the time Peter had spent since leaving the blockade. The small space of this test tube should not contain much air or oxygen, but the demon worm is still lively and seems to be unaffected by lack of oxygen. Can this creature survive in an anaerobic environment? After Wesker thought of this, he quickly thought of a way to deal with his mortal enemy. He obtained the ability of the demon worm to survive in an anaerobic environment, and then dragged Luo Guang into an anaerobic environment, so that he could deal with the other party. No, he wanted to humiliate Luo Guang, just like what he did to him before, and let him roll away like a stray dog. In the blink of an eye, a man stood in front of Peter. Before he could react, the test tube containing the demon worm was taken away from him. Peter couldn't say the rest of the words. Although Wesker was wearing sunglasses, he could still feel or see the fierce light behind the sunglasses, and goosebumps all over his body. Wesker carefully checked the test tube and confirmed that there were no air holes on it. But that's right. He looked at the mucus deposited at the bottom of the test tube and knew that the vent could not be opened. This is not an earthworm dug from the ground. Peter didn't notice Wesker's intention and thought that the other party was confirming whether it was a demon worm. Wesker didn't answer the other party. He looked at the demon worm in the test tube spitting saliva at him through the special glass, and his mouth corners rose. He had a hunch that this would be the last piece of the puzzle in his research. As long as the fusion was successful, he could surpass that damn man. Retracting the expression on his face, Wesker looked at Peter and said, "Deal, bring everything with you and follow me." "Wait, my car is at the bottom of the mountain." Peter pointed in the direction of the bottom of the mountain. Wesker calmed the other party and asked, "Do you have any important items in your car?" Not really, I only brought this box out." Peter thought for a while and answered the question. As for the fact that he only paid a deposit for renting the car and reached a deal with the other party with a fake identity information, it doesn't matter. "Then follow me." Luo Guang has been paying attention to Peter's experience. He is also ready to kill Peter's life at any time and not reveal the information of the Shinra virus in his body. The reason why he did not stop Wesker's plan immediately was that he had not controlled the other party when the other party got the demon worm sample, and when he knew it, Peter was already standing in front of Wesker. At that time, if he dared to act rashly, it would only waste Peter's life. After all, if he used Peter's body to destroy the sample, he would be stopped immediately by Wesker. Luo Guang thought it would be better to let Peter go in undercover to see if he could gain anything. Although he didn't quite believe that Wesker would let Peter be the first person in charge of the project, what if? At that time, he could find an opportunity to destroy all the samples of the demon worm and disrupt Wesker's current research progress. But soon, Peter, who left with Wesker, arrived at the nearest airport and was about to leave Luo Guang's sensing range, so Luo Guang had to decide as soon as possible whether to spare his life. After thinking it over, he issued 2 orders to the Shinra virus in Peter's body. First, it lurks in Peter's brain disguised as ordinary brain cells. Unless Wesker wanted to capture Peter to make a brain-controlled robot, a normal physical examination would not be able to detect the existence of the Shinra virus. Even if it is discovered, it will be a castrated version, and it is also a virus that is exclusive to you, but it is not so easy to be exploited. The second order was a little trick based on Peter's IQ. The Shinra virus in his brain interferes with Peter's thinking process and adds a wisdom halo to him, confirming that he will not develop useful gadgets. Since he has made these 2 orders, it means that he has temporarily given up harvesting Peter's life. In addition to the benefits mentioned before, another advantage is that it can help you find Wesker's secret research institute in the future, and you can also cooperate with yourself internally and externally. Of course, all of this is based on the fact that Peter can live well until that day. Wesker took Peter and his men all the way back to the secret institute. Axela came up to him and said, "Lord Wesker, you have worked hard on this mission." As she spoke, she put a white coat on Wesker. This made Peter look surprised and envious. He was surprised that the tall man wearing sunglasses was also a researcher. Of course, he didn't misunderstand that the other person was a brainless person just because of his muscles. Because when he contacted Sanley and Company before, the other party said that the person sent to meet him was the person in charge. Axela will explain to Peter in advance that she is not worried that Peter will anger Wesker, but that she is worried that Peter will affect Wesker's mood. As for envy, it was naturally because Peter saw the beautiful woman putting on a white coat for her, and at the same time he couldn't hide the admiration in his eyes. Judging from various signs, this man named Wesker should be rich, powerful, handsome, and talented, with beautiful women around him who admire him. He can be said to be a winner in life. How could he not be envious and jealous? After Excel addressed Wesker and took the box containing the demon worm samples from Wesker's hand, she asked, "What should we do with this person?" Peter didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk to the beautiful woman. Although there was a perfect person like Wesker, nothing could happen between the two, but chatting with the beautiful woman was also a pleasant thing. Boss Wesker asked me to be the first person in charge of the demon worm research project. Looking at Peter who was approaching, Excella looked disgusted and waved to the security personnel on both sides to hold him back and prevent him from approaching her again. There is no need to speak, not because the security guards will look at their faces and cooperate with her tacitly, but because these people are under her control. "Hey! What are you doing?" Peter tried to break free with an angry look, but in vain. Wesker did not look back at Peter, and directly gave an order to Excella, "Let him receive our loyalty education. I don't want the people here to be traitors. At the same time, prepare a research room for me." Excella quickly arranged these two things. There is no monitoring equipment in the research room, only the activated instruments and Wesker who is studying. He completed the final adjustments and put the larvae into the culture chamber. The final results will be confirmed 2 months later. A pleasant smile appeared on Wesker's face, and he said to himself with satisfaction, "This is the best work so far, so naturally there must be a name that matches mine." Divine Parasite, this is the sacred name he gave to the soon-to-be-born Son of God. Meow, Chapter 430 was reviewed twice yesterday before it was approved, so I feel like some parts are missing. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 442. Luo Guang is conducting research in the Brood. In addition to Jasmine and 2 Harlan virus experts who have rebelled from the apocalypse, he has also invited Alex and her crony Stuart to come over to assist. "I didn't expect you to invite me here." As a former confidant of Spencer, Alex naturally knew the location of the Caucasus base, but she never came because Luo Guang had long cleared her authority here, so she would not ask for trouble. The other party had his own Jinra virus in his body, so Luo Guang dared to invite the other party and gave him a guest-level permission. He said, "Do you have any relationship with Spencer? The kindness of raising someone should be repaid with a spring of water. My relationship with him is not that good. If it hadn't been for Albert's death and betrayal, he wouldn't have looked down upon me as a sick dot." An unhappy look appeared on Alex's face, her brows furrowed, and she continued, "I'm just a substitute for Albert, and I'm just a tool for Spencer to realize his immortality plan. But judging from the fact that Spencer let her act alone, maybe he didn't treat her as a tool." Although Luo Guang thought so, he had no intention of speaking for Spencer. He answered the other party's initial question and said, "In this case, it is not normal for me to invite you over." He went on to explain the reason for inviting the other party over. "Back to the topic, I want you to help us develop weapons against demonic worms. Jasmine and the others are not as familiar with parasites as viruses, so they hope Luo Guang can provide more talent to assist." So Luo Guang thought of Alex, a talented researcher. Alex and Stuart each picked up the files on the table and looked at them carefully. Luo Guang asked the mourner who was used as a servant to bring him a cup of coffee. After he finished his coffee, the two of them also finished reading the information. Stuart said, "Can't ordinary antivirus and insecticide methods solve this kind of devil worm?" Luo Guang shook his head and handed the other 2 documents to the 2 of them, saying, "If it could be solved that easily, I wouldn't need to call you over. Follow the general method of treating worms in water and gradually upgrade the method, but the devil worm is as difficult to deal with as an unkillable xiaoqiang. The plants and fish in the water have been poisoned to death, and it is still very active." Among the documents handed over are the experimental records of Jasmine and BSAA in the past few days. "Is it possible to use the T-virus?" Alex said, Use magic to defeat magic. Luo Guang told what happened in Pskov City and said, it shouldn't be possible. T-virus zombies and Harlan virus zombies have demon worms parasitic in them. He added angrily, we are decent people. If something happens accidentally when using biochemical viruses, we will be in trouble. So what do you want us to do? Stewart's eyes did not leave the precious experimental report. Luo Guang explained the difficulties faced by the city of Pskov. The devil worms on the ground can be easily solved, but the problem is in the water. He continued, these devil worms spread very quickly in the water and have entered the underground river area, so even if the devil worms in Pskov are cleaned up, they will definitely recur later. Alex's first reaction was that this was a big business, and she said, if we help you successfully develop targeted insecticides, I will take a share of the pie and authorize our island factory. You have successfully developed it, are you still without a formula? Alex said, I call it courtesy first and then fighting. The products developed here will be released by BSAA. Whether the formula will be announced directly is another matter, but if there is a bid, I will make arrangements for you. Luo Guang would not give the other party an accurate answer. Stewart thought of what BSAA had done before and said, I remember that the antidotes and vaccines developed by BSAA were immediately announced. Luo Guang nodded and continued, and Alex, if you don't want a bunch of spies to come to the island and attract Wesker again, it's best not to stand out too much. A quick shot. Although the small island where Alex lives has made great progress in economic strength under her governance, it does not have any advantages compared to other places. Being suddenly named and authorized will only attract the attention of others. Doubt. Luo Guang mentioned this point, and after thinking about it, Alex no longer struggled with her previous request. Then he brought Alex and Jasmine to meet and introduce each other. Because Jasmine's appearance is a bit scary, she is wearing a special mask at this time. Alex and Stewart didn't pay too much attention to this, because after chatting for a few words, they seemed to regret meeting each other for a long time, and discussed scientific research in depth. Although Luo Guang could hear their words, he did not join them. Instead, he turned and left after confirming that they had discussed a new idea. Research on the other side has also made progress. There will be some progress at the GIMZ Research Institute, starting with the seawater test that Luo Guang asked Louis to do again. The next day, Louis got up and found that the demon worm, which was already inactive, was covered in a layer of white crystals. At the same time, it remained motionless, and its soft body seemed to become stiff. He immediately called Luo Guang, took protective measures, and together they unboxed and inspected the demonic worm. Louis used tweezers to pick out one of the devil worms that was as stiff as if it had been coated in flour and fried, and then he placed it gently in the testing box. This testing box is transparent on 5 sides, and there are 2 anti-bite and anti-corrosion gloves on one wall. Researchers can put their entire forearm and hand in, and then perform various research operations to ensure that the devil worm does not bite people. Louis put on gloves, then picked up the tool hanging above the box, first scraped off some of the white crystals from the demon worm, and then put it into an exchange cabin similar to the delivery slot at a bank counter. After he closed the door in the box, Luo Guang cooperated with him to open the small door on the wall and took out the glass dish containing the crystal. After putting in a new one, Luo Guang took the white crystal for testing, while Louis continued to study the demon worm. He first scraped off all the white crystals on the demon worm, revealing the black body of the demon worm inside. Unlike the previous normal demon worm, the skin of this worm has cracks and is wrinkled and huddled together. From the appearance alone, it looks like the demon worm has died of dehydration. He further dissected the devil worm, carefully peeling off the crispy skin. Louis was a little surprised. He also found white crystals inside. In order to confirm whether this was the same substance as the surface, he scraped a little more onto a new glass dish. Luo Guang had just returned and was about to leave to test another sample. Lewis concentrated on scraping off the white crystals from the demon worm's body, stacking them on the other side, and separating them from the crystals on the surface. Rightward arrow. He observed the empty cavity of the demon worm and looked through the stacked white crystals with a puzzled expression. The results are out. Most of the white crystals tested twice are sodium chloride, which is salt. Luoguang came back with 2 reports. What about the other ingredients? Lewis didn't move his hands, he was thinking about things. The first part contains the mucus acid component of the devil worm, while the second part contains components of its internal organs, but these components are very low, and the remaining components are various impurities. Lewis took his hand and left the isolation box, took the report and read it carefully, the smile on his face getting bigger and bigger. Luoguang said, one step ahead of the other party, "It seems that we have found the key." Lewis nodded, "Yes, these devil worms cannot survive in places with high salt content. The composition of the salt water used in this experiment is almost the same as that of ordinary sea water. The devil worm should not escape to the sea, which is a rare piece of good news. Since the Peacock incident, there hasn't been any good news regarding the demon worm." Hearing Luoguang's words, Lewis nodded in approval and said, "Just because the devil worm has intelligence, it won't think about breaking through itself. Then the possibility that the other party will suddenly mutate and adapt to sea water is very small. As a result, humans have slowed down their pace of evolution. So we can solve this disaster by just pouring salt into the water. Well, it should be more difficult." Luoguang looked at the water tank containing sea water, which automatically recorded the water temperature, salinity, and other conditions of the water tank. As he walked over, he said, "Those devil worms are all dead, but the salt content of the water in the water tank has not changed." Opening the record of the water tank, Luoguang saw the record of adding salt multiple times and said, "It seems that these devil worms are sacrificing themselves to create a viable space for other partners. But there is much more salt in the sea than here, and they can't eat it all." After Lewis finished cleaning the test box, he came to Luoguang, took out another one, and put it into the clean water. The white crystals on the demon worm did not melt, and he did not fish the demon worm out immediately. "This crystal has not melted. As for whether the pickled demon worms will be resurrected, we have to wait and see for a while." Lewis heard Luoguang say about the origin of this demon worm, that it could be resurrected after being frozen for so many years, so he did not dare to judge easily. He wrote in his notebook an idea about using salt to solve the problem. Luoguang saw what Lewis wrote and discussed this idea directly with Lewis. Although it is basically impossible to use salt to turn the Vilikaya River into a sea river, it is a good way to use salt to solve the worms in the city's water supply system. Finally, he came to the conclusion that he could give it a try, so Luoguang directly sent the matter to Jill. Neither the BSAA nor the Bear Country Research Institute have conducted the seawater test, so naturally they have not discovered this. People from these 2 institutes got Lewis's experimental data, which was like a treasure, and they immediately started a heated discussion. Yevsky also had a certain understanding of the strength of the paranoid parasite researcher that Jill mentioned. Jingle. The doorbell rang in Lewis' research room. Soon an assistant came in with a large iron cage covered with black cloth and said, "Professor, this is the chicken you want." There is another assistant behind him, holding a wooden cage in each hand, also covered with cloth. "Professor," Luoguang also knew about Lewis asking people to find chickens, but this was the first time he heard this title. When Lewis gave the order before, the assistant just said "received" and immediately went to do the work. "Hey, I'm self-proclaimed, but what's wrong with calling myself a professor with my ability?" Perhaps because he is doing research, Lewis gives people a sense of confidence, and he is not as careless as he was when they first met. He likes his current life very much. He wants to take a vacation. He can take a vacation after dealing with the things at hand. The salary is high and he can go out to travel. There is no harm without comparison. Compared with Umbrella Corporation, where he can only walk around the city where the research institute is located, and the Illuminati, where he can only walk around the sex territory, he is much freer here. He cherishes his current life very much, so he will naturally go all out to complete the tasks assigned by the superiors, so he is so serious. No problem, as long as you like it. Luo Guang shrugged and said, next is the biological confrontation test, right? Yes. Louis temporarily put down the operation at hand and went to the other side of the laboratory, where there is an isolation room. Luo Guang took the initiative to say, let me do it. Louis knows his own weight. Although he is the strongest among all the researchers in the institute, he is still far behind Luo Guang. Luo Guang took the iron cage and the isolation box containing the demon worms handed over by Louis, and walked into the isolation room. Because he was wearing protective clothing, the assistants did not show any surprise. Luo Guang first took away the cloth covering the iron cage, revealing the figure of the creature inside. Its body is strong, muscular, and agile, and the claws on its feet are no less than those of an eagle. After adapting to the light, it proudly raised its neck, looked around, and stared at Luo Guang beside it with fierce eyes. It was not afraid of the vague dangerous aura on Luo Guang, and quickly attacked and pecked at Luo Guang outside the cage. Luo Guang took a step to the side to avoid the attack, and looked at the Luxi fighting cock in the cage with interest. This kind of chicken is also called sucking chicken, biting chicken, etc. It is naturally good at fighting. When fighting, it bites with its mouth, kicks with its claws, and beats with its wings. It has a character that would rather die than surrender. After releasing the chicken, the proud rooster immediately attacked Luo Guang, but the protective suit used by the GIMZ Institute was a special version, costing $50,000 per set, so it would not be scratched by the fighting cock. The demon worms do not have any visual system like eyeballs, and they use a temporarily unconfirmed method to observe and sense the surroundings. These demon worms currently have no special reaction to the appearance of the Luxi fighting cock. Luo Guang released the demon worms and then quickly retreated. Perhaps it was nature, or for other reasons, the moment the demon worms crawled out of the isolation box, they saw the fighting cocks that Luo Guang avoided and locked their eyes on the demon worms crawling on the ground. For the demon worms, it doesn't matter what is in front of them. They only need to know that the creatures in front of them can prosper their tribe, and then they will not stop attacking. Facing the demon worms that did not retreat but advanced, the fighting cocks were also aroused to fight, flapping their wings and killing them. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 443. The Luxi fighting cock flapped its wings and flew into the air, avoiding the attack of the demon worm. In mid-air, it adjusted its landing position, like a falcon catching a rabbit, and its claws fell down, directly stepping on a demon worm. The sharp hard beak was like lightning, and it pecked off the head of the immobile demon worm with one blow. Some demon worms sprayed acid, which was blocked by the feathers on their bodies. Other demon worms arched their bodies, jumped up with force, and were slapped away by the wings of the Luxi fighting cock. Awesome. Louis just felt that it was amazing. He had seen a lot of bullfighting, but this was the first time he had seen a fighting cock. It was worth it for him to contact the boss to negotiate with the mysterious country to get a fighting cock back for experiment. There was a reason why the G.I.MZ boss had to go out so much trouble for a fighting cock. Because in October 2001, the Luxi fighting cock was included in the first batch of National Livestock and Poultry Breed Resource Protection List, so Luo Guang also had the task of protecting the fighting cock. The fighting cock accepted all the monster worms and ate them directly. Facing the motionless worms, it still maintained its ferocity, eating as fiercely as fighting. Looking at the other party's wolfing, Luo Guang couldn't help but wonder if it had any problems eating the worms, what in the institute could replace the gastric lavage machine. The ground was a mess, and the fighting cock was not unscathed. The hard cuticles on its feet were corroded, and some blood and corrosive liquid were mixed together, but it still stood and did not sit down to rest because of the injury. Luo Guang stepped forward and grabbed the Luxi fighting cock and checked it to confirm that there were no other wounds. After eating the monster worms, the fighting cock did not have any problems, and he felt more energetic. Luo Guang put the fighting cock back into the iron cage and handed it back to Louis' assistant. "Take it and observe the situation," Louis added an order on the side. Yes, one of the assistants took the order, which was also a learning process. Next, the creatures in the wooden cages were tested. Louis fished out some more demon worms from the water tank, put them in the isolation box and handed them to Luo Guang. The assistant had already lifted the cloth on one of the wooden cages and took out 2 chickens with their feet tied. These are ordinary yellow flower chickens, 1 male and 1 female, both bought from the farm. From the appearance, compared with the previous Luxi fighting cocks, their momentum was inferior. They saw the demon worms for the first time and could not tell what kind of worms the enemy was. They thought it was no different from the mealworms they had eaten before, and ran over happily to eat. Compared with the Luxi fighting cocks, the combat effectiveness of these 2 yellow flower chickens was much weaker. In a one-on-one fight, the yellow flower chickens could beat the demon worms, but when there were more of them, they could not resist. However, the yellow chicken also has its own advantages. Their hair is more fluffy. The demon worms ate a mouthful of hair in one bite, and then pulled the chicken feathers off and fell to the ground, unable to enter the chicken's body at all. But after the hen fell into a disadvantageous position, she began to avoid the battle, running around everywhere, and finally fell to the ground and became a zombie chicken and was killed by Luo Guang. Luo Guang said to Louis outside the isolation room, "Louis, put the other 2 in." Louis handed this task to his other assistant, who had another wooden cage with 2 chickens. With 2 more yellow chickens joining the battlefield, the originally one-sided battlefield was instantly turned back, and the demon worms instantly fell into a disadvantageous position. Finally, Luo Guang tied up the 2 surviving yellow chickens and handed them to his assistant, asking him to be responsible for observing the situation of the 2 chickens. After cleaning up the isolation room and making sure that all the demon worms were dead, he and Louis returned to the lounge and waited for the report from the chickens. Louis poured Luo Guang a cup of coffee. They were not as urgent as before, and they had the leisure to drink coffee and rest because this experiment gave them a good result. If the chickens that ate the devil worms were fine, it at least means that the devil worms from alien planets also have natural enemies on Earth. It will take at least 1 or 2 days to confirm the condition of the chickens. Since there was no rush, the 2 of them started chatting. Louis talked about his servant Leon, and the cow princess. Anyway, they talked about anything. Luo Guang also asked him if there were any areas that needed improvement in the GIMZ Institute. Wu Song was the boss. Although he had a calm personality, he and Louis were always superiors and subordinates. Luo Guang and him were equals, and they had a life and death relationship, so it was easier for Louis to tell him. In the Caucasus's mother nest base, Alex and others used the factory inside the base to make a weapon. The appearance looked like a trumpet added to the muzzle of a pistol. However, unlike firearms, this muzzle was sealed. The overall style was a bit wasteland, and there were traces of welding in many places. This was an ultrasonic weapon that they chose to take a different approach after discussing it before. Finally, under the fully automatic test of Red Emperor, Jasmine and her team quickly found the ultrasonic wave segment that the demon worms could not withstand. Unlike humans, the demon worms with much smaller bodies have much lower tolerance, so the weapon in Jasmine's hand has almost no damage to humans. Jasmine took this secret weapon and aimed at the transparent isolation box of the same model as the GIMZ Institute under the watch of people including Red Emperor. There were many demon worms wriggling inside, not knowing their impending fate. Jasmine pulled the trigger, and the gun made a buzzing sound. The demon worms did not change at first, but as time passed, they finally found something wrong. The water was vibrating slightly, and they began to feel their bodies trembling, and a force was gathering and getting stronger, as if to tear their bodies apart. Here it comes. Jasmine was the only one with mental power, which made her more sensitive to small reactions. When everyone heard her words, they gathered around and stared at the isolation box inside the box. Hong Huang also confirmed again that the observation instrument had been turned on and was recording the changes of the demon worms. The demon worm in the isolation box kept struggling, and suddenly its body softened and floated up, with various liquids flowing out of its mouth. Success! Stuart cheered happily when he saw that the first test was successful. Although life here is not bad, he prefers to be alone with Alex, so he hopes that this assistance can end as soon as possible. The other two researchers who defected from the apocalypse also showed some joy on their faces, but they were still relatively stable and did not make any other moves. The next step is to find a way to improve this weapon. Alex did not smile. She was not satisfied with the efficiency of this weapon, and she was focused on research and did not notice Stuart's mood. Jasmine nodded in agreement and said, "This weapon takes too long to take effect, and accidents are likely to happen during this period. For example, the demon worms escape or kill the weapon holder." Others understood what the other party was talking about, and they were also thinking about it. Alex said, "And we haven't tested other situations yet. Many demon worms have drilled into the pipes. Whether the pipe wall will affect the effect requires further testing." It was she, the Red Emperor, who realized the ideas of these researchers and made this weapon. She said, "This is just a trial run. The version made with discarded parts will naturally kill enemies more slowly, so I have to wait until I make the official version before conducting the next test." Huh? Why use discarded parts? Stuart looked strange. Hong Huang said, "The master said to make one first to verify it and test my creativity." This was a small game that Luo Guang and Hong Huang played, and she also found it interesting after hearing the master's suggestion. Being able to use discarded parts to make what Jasmine and the others needed was a manifestation of creativity. At the same time, it also showed that Hong Huang could integrate the knowledge in her database, rather than copying the drawings. "By the way, where did Luo Guang go?" Alex asked. There was no Luo Guang among the people watching the experiment, so she continued to ask, "Isn't he very concerned about the demon worm? He even arranged for me and Stuart to come to assist." Hong Huang explained, "He is resting." In fact, after learning that Jasmine and the others had chosen another route, Luo Guang chose to research a special virus for the demon worm on his own. It is better to have multiple paths than to put all your eggs in one basket. Hong Huang didn't know Luo Guang's secret, and the others were not suspicious, so the topic was skipped directly. Jasmine and Hong Huang had been together for a while, and she asked, "If I make this thing in my hand in a regular way, how much can its performance be improved?" According to speculation, this version made of waste products has only about 60% of the performance of the regular version. Hong Huang was actually not satisfied with this result. If Jasmine and the others were not in a hurry to test it, she would continue to adjust it and squeeze out all the performance of this ultrasonic weapon. "Next, let's make a more regular version," Alex said. "We need to collect the most accurate data to better confirm the lethality to the demon worm." At the same time, Hong Huang's stereoscopic projection also appeared in Luo Guang's office. She repeated Jasmine's words and asked, "What should we do next? Can we install black technology to prevent the enemy from cracking it? This ultrasonic weapon can be converted to military use and can kill people invisibly. For this reason, the practical drone developed by Luo Guang and Hong Huang was not promoted and sold." In fact, Luo Guang is not the only person in the world who thinks of using drones. Organization X also has similar drones, which are said to be inspired by the remote-controlled robots of the HCF organization. Use it online. Hong Huang started with an anti-piracy trick. It seems that she still remembered Luo Guang's previous game company and collected anti-piracy information in advance. This won't work. There may not be an internet connection in places where biochemical hazards appear. Luo Guang didn't want to cause casualties among anti-biochemical personnel for this reason. After thinking for a while, Hong Huang said, "We can use Umbrella's advanced materials to ensure that the enemy cannot copy them. This advanced material is part of Umbrella's legacy. It has not been released or patented." Luo Guang shook his head and said, "It's useless. You can make it with discarded parts, so what advanced materials do you need?" Hong Huang continued, "Or use precision machined parts, which will increase the difficulty of copying." As soon as she finished speaking, she retorted, "No, the trial work just now does not require very precise parts." Luo Guang suggested, two options. First, I need you to research available anti-ultrasonic materials. Sound-absorbing material will do. But you can't let people go out carrying a piece of sound-absorbing cotton, right? If you have a spear, you must have a shield. Luo Guang asked her to set up the ultrasonic weapon that the Red Emperor made deliberately to make a buzzing sound when used. After all, human beings' ultrasound cannot be heard by the ears. I understand. The Red Emperor then asked about the second plan. Make the structure a little more complicated, so that it affects the whole body, and it breaks down as soon as they dismantle it. But if you do this, the cost will be much higher. In the Red Emperor's impression, the other party does not seem to be a greedy person. Luo Guang smiled slightly and said, "This way the selling price is high." Although anti-biochemical talk about money is vulgar, but without money, anti-biochemical activities cannot be carried out efficiently, so he will not regard money as dirt. And he already has 4 solutions on hand, so this ultrasonic pest-killing weapon is not necessary, and it may not be put into production in the end. If he really needs to produce this weapon, he is prepared to cooperate with Lieutenant General Li to produce it, and occasionally show the value of GIMZ, where the labor force is relatively cheap and the cost can be controlled. Okay, since the master said so, the Red Emperor would not refuse. In the blink of an eye, more than half a month has passed since the Peskov incident. But this biohazard incident remains unresolved. The Woolly Bear Nation cooperated with BSAA to clean up the demon worms on the surface of Peskov City, but the demon worms in the sewers still pop up from time to time, so the survivors of Peskov City still cannot go home. As Luo Guang told Jill about the weakness of the devil worms that could not filter salt, Mao Zierkuo directly transferred 10 tons of coarse salt with a wave of his hand as the first round of attempts and put it into the water supply plant. The effect was indeed good, which prompted the Z government to bring in more salt, put it into the water supply plant, and then turned on the water supply to wipe out all the devil worms in the pipes. But then this trick was useless, because they found that the number of demon worms in the sewers had not decreased much. The current situation is that people have successfully suppressed the spread and growth of the devil worm, and so far there has been no large-scale infection again. But the demonic worms could not be eliminated no matter what. Their repeated appearance made the soldiers in charge nervous for a long time, and their morale was gradually worn away in the stalemate. Not only soldiers, but also many survivors of this biological crisis in Peskov. People who have lived in temporary settlement areas for a long time have become more and more irritable as time goes by. Fortunately, thanks to the comfort of Tarasev's staff and the guidance of public opinion in the furry bear country, large-scale chaos did not break out in the end. Gil just squinted in the command room for a while when he was woken up by the ringing of the phone. "Jill, I'm coming to find you." Luo Guang's voice came from the phone. "Huh? Where are you?" Jill rubbed his eyes. "The door." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a commotion at the door of the command post, and the guard walked in. Report, the consultant is back, he. Say it quickly. Gil had already hung up the phone, stood up and walked out the door. He brought a lot of chickens. Gil also heard the sound of cock crow, and couldn't help but be filled with curiosity. Luo Guang got out of the car, stood in front of Gil, and saluted before the other party hugged him. Minister, I have brought you 1,000 elite soldiers. They are ready to go to war at any time. Meow, a day in the life of a single meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 444. Gil walked to the live chicken transport truck that Luo Guang drove and looked in through the ventilation window. She looked at the chirping animals inside and asked hesitantly, "Are these all chickens?" Of course she knew what kind of creature was in the car, but she really couldn't connect it with the elite soldiers Luo Guang said, and she didn't think her boyfriend bought a car of chickens to comfort the BSAA soldiers. Luo Guang faced the curious gazes of everyone and said, "These are authentic yellow flower chickens. I will get one for you to cook when I have time. It will ensure the taste is fresh and tender and the meat is full." There's a reason why he didn't use Lu 11. The combat effectiveness of fighting chickens is much stronger than that of broiler chickens, but their reproduction and growth rate is slightly slower than that of yellow-flowered chickens. Moreover, they are protected animals, so Luo Guang and Louis finally decided to use yellow-flowered chickens as carriers for genetic modification. Its ability to digest demon worms is not the result of Luo Guang and Louis's adjustments, but a natural ability. That's why the chicken race is considered the natural enemy of demon worms. There is only one genetic adjustment. They integrated the genes of Luxi fighting chickens, making these yellow-flowered chickens more ferocious and better at fighting. Let's get down to business. Gil gave Luo Guang a small fist and asked, "What on earth is going on?" Keith also came over with a curious look on his face and asked, "Are you giving us extra food?" They have been eating the big pot rice of the bear country with beef, pork, and potatoes these days, and they want to change their taste. Luo Guang repeated what he said when he arrived, and then revealed the answer: "This is a biochemical weapon developed by RGIMZ. Biological and chemical weapons." The people around him were in an uproar when they heard this, and some people had already picked up weapons as a reflex. Luo Guang didn't want them to reflexively beat the chicken to death and then use it for snacks, so he quickly added, "It's a weapon against biohazards. Case, put your gun away, your drool betrays your true thoughts." Keith chuckled. Although he didn't drool, he still wiped his mouth, indicating that Luo Guang was right, and so did the others. They laughed sheepishly, and then they dispersed to work. How could they not see that Luo Guang was joking? He was just greedy. Gil did not misunderstand and said, "Can these chickens be used to solve the problems in Peace Cough City?" When it came to business, Keith also put away his smile and pricked up his ears to listen to Luo Guang's next words. "It cannot be completely solved. This is for you. Taking it out will help you deal with those demonic worms. What BSAA is most worried about are not the biochemical monsters, which are easy to hide from open guns and hidden arrows. The threat of demonic worms hiding in dark and damp places is even greater." Case's eyes lit up and he asked, "Do they eat insects?" "Chickens definitely eat worms," Luo Guang said as if this was common sense. Case waved his hand and corrected himself, "They eat demon worms. Eat it, and we have tested it, and you won't suffer from diarrhea or death after eating it. Judging from the test, the devil worms can basically be completely digested the next day." Luo Guang made his words clear and said, "So this is for you. I remember, Gil, you said that there are several sewer manhole covers that are not sealed, specifically used to lure demon worms up to kill them." Gil nodded and said, "I understand. You want those chickens to wait and see, free up some manpower, and at the same time be able to better deal with the enemies that are lured up." She also thought of other uses. Luo Guang added, "By the way, it can be eaten after the incident. The researchers and I have tried it, but it must be cooked. Keith nodded, took note of Luo Guang's words carefully, and prepared to go to the banquet when the time comes. Gil looked at case like this, sighed, and said, "Can these chickens solve the sewer problem?" Luo Guang shook his head and said, "No, they can't use their advantages in the water." As the transformation of yellow-flowered chickens came to an end, Lewis began other tests. He previously chose to use chickens for natural enemy tests based on the natural enemies of insects in nature. The natural enemies of insects are basically birds, and chickens are easier to mass-produce, so he immediately thought that he would hit the jackpot. The next test subjects were various animals that could live in the water, but unfortunately they were all wiped out. Lewis could not find any of these animals that could innately restrain the demon worms. It's not that things like fish and turtles don't eat bugs anymore, but it's useless to eat them. The larvae in the dead adult bugs will be born in advance, and then pierce the stomach bags of these aquatic animals to parasitize. The chicken is fine because its digestive system is very special. The pH value of its gastric juice is very low and is a strong acid, so the corrosive liquid of the devil worm is not a big problem for it. As for those larvae, there are many small stones in the gizzards of the chicken's two stomachs, which can directly grind the larvae coming out of the devil worm's body. That's why Chicken Brother stands out among so many creatures and becomes one of the antibiochemical pioneers. Member. Gil said with a little disappointment, but our first goal is to deal with the enemies in the water, especially the devil worms in the Vilikaya River. Luo Guang said, I also have a solution for what's in the water, but it's a bit troublesome. I need to talk to Yevsky. Gil didn't take him to Yevsky immediately, after all, there was not enough time. After arranging the chicken matter, Gil pulled Luo Guang, who was holding a big bag, back to his command post and asked, what method? Since Luo Guang so solemnly said that he wanted to talk to Yevsky, this method must be unusual, so Gil planned to discuss it with him first. The entire watershed is poisoned. To be precise, it is poisoned in places where there are devil worms. However, the poison is not easy to filter, so the water in the entire watershed must not be used directly. In other words, it needs to be boiled for drinking, but according to what Luo Guang and Gil have seen and heard when traveling around the world, Westerners do not have the habit of drinking hot water, and this is very fatal in terms of biohazard prevention. Jill asked her about the things she cared about one by one. Will it have any impact on the ecology of the watershed? Basically not. It's aimed at demon worms. It will destroy the genes in their bodies and poison the demon worms. This was researched by Luo Guang himself and inspired by cockroach-killing gel bait. The ultrasonic weapon has also been developed, but he has no intention of taking it out directly, because using poison is the fastest and can directly solve this biological crisis. There are many restrictions on the use of ultrasonic weapons, and those demon worms are not fools. They can easily avoid attacks as long as they stay away. If he presented the two options together, Yevsky would definitely choose the one with the least impact on the people, which is the ultrasonic weapon, so Luo Guang wanted to try to persuade the other party to use this method first. If the other party refused in the end, it wouldn't be too late for him to take out the weapon, but it would definitely be a lot of trouble to eliminate the demon worms later, and he hated inefficient work. Gil, who didn't know Luo Guang's backup plan, asked, besides this, are there any other plans? This kind of thing sounds very scary, and it is hard to believe that it has no side effects, and she knows that her boyfriend usually has several plans prepared. Luo Guang said, there is another one, but it is the same as the method of pouring salt. It cannot completely solve the devil worm. Jill was suspicious. You wanted to take a vacation, so you recommended the poison plan, right? She has known Luo Guang for so long, how could she not know his personality or work style? Luo Guang shook his head. This was one of the secondary reasons. The main reason was that he wanted to solve the incident once and for all instead of wasting time over and over again. You still remember what I mentioned about the underground river, right? It's impossible to predict where the underground river will flow. If we don't use ruthless measures, there will be no way to clean up this demonic worm. There may be fish that slip through the net after poisoning, but the problem can be solved as long as the poison bait is placed at specific points, otherwise BSAA will always be held back by this biological crisis. Of course, Gil remembered every word Luo Guang said and said, you also said you don't know where the underground river will flow. What if the poison you put goes to other river basins? You can't make a global announcement, right? Luo Guang said before that the water in the entire basin was not drinkable directly, so she was worried that people in other basins would get sick if they drank raw water. Jill, I don't know if this poison is harmful to humans, but this is because our GIMZ Research Institute has not conducted human experiments. As for animal tests such as white mice, it has been successful. The genes and sizes of demon worms are different from humans and other creatures, so Luo Guang still has ways to carry out targeted design, but the price is that only he can do it. But there are always risks. Jill was still very worried about this. Luo Guang replied, it's normal for you to have this worry, so I have to discuss it with you and Jevsky and let the bear country decide whether to use this method. In fact, it means passing the responsibility to others. Gil nodded, and then followed Luo Guang's request to contact Jevsky. After Jevsky finished handling the matters at hand, he came to the BSAA camp. You can't always go to the camp of the Bear Country Army to discuss issues. There is no hierarchical relationship between the two parties. For Jevsky, this didn't matter. He entered the BSAA command post and asked straight to the point, I heard you brought a load of chickens here. After Luo Guang told about these chickens, Jevsky said, can breeding be promoted? He wants to promote it nationwide, which will not only develop the breeding industry, but also prevent devil worms, killing two birds with one stone. Luo Guang said in surprise, is this a genetically modified chicken? Jill also said helpfully, isn't there still no conclusion on whether there are any side effects when eating this? She didn't expect that the other party would have such thoughts. She originally thought that the other party would skip the chicken thing and directly ask about the solution to the demon worm. Well, I just think that this kind of chicken can be very effective against small-scale demon worms. After all, we can't send people to patrol various settlements every day. This biochemical crisis is the first major event for the president of the furry bear country after taking office. Although he did not say it clearly, he has already hinted that Jevsky will solve it as soon as possible. Jevsky has put in so much effort and is naturally unwilling to leave at this time and be taken advantage of by his successor, so he does not want to miss anything that can help maintain his current position. The chicken matter can be discussed later, he asked, what is the method you said? You actually want to come over to discuss it in person? When Luo Guang asked Jill to contact the other party, he did not reveal the plan on the phone. He answered Jevsky's words and told the whole plan. Well, no wonder this matter cannot be discussed over the phone. Jevsky also knew that this plan was a bit bold and could be easily misinterpreted, so he asked, can this solve all the demon worms at once? No, Luo Guang would definitely not give a positive answer, and continued, solving most of the demon worms is only a theoretical result. The unconfirmed risks and benefits made Jevsky fall into deep thought. After a while, he slowly said, I need the ingredient list of this poison to test the effect for our researchers. Sorry, this formula cannot be leaked. Luo Guang rejected the other party's proposal. This was not his sudden intention to raise the price. He had never mentioned this approach that could eliminate people's concerns. The reason is naturally that this poison cannot be produced with the technology of this world, and it also involves Luo Guang's core secrets. Gil exclaimed, what? Jevsky was a step slower than Gil. He didn't expect that the minister of BSAA didn't know about this matter. Sorry, Gil. Luo Guang didn't want to tell Gil a lie. Can I ask the reason? But how could Jevsky not ask the reason? Trade secrets, Luo Guang said as he opened the big bag on the ground and took out a sealed aquarium from it. There were many aquatic plants on the water in the aquarium, and the water was naturally filled with demon worms. Yevsky and Jill approached the box curiously and were startled by the demon worms that suddenly bit the glass. Before the other party asked, Luo Guang said, "I picked it up when I came here. Let me show you the effect of this poison." It was impossible to give the ingredient list, he only provided a demonstration of the actual effect. He took out a black pill from his pocket, then opened the feeding port on the water tank and threw it in. Jill and the others looked into the aquarium curiously. The demon worms were attracted by the movement of the pill falling into the water, temporarily gave up attacking the people outside the aquarium, and turned to bite the pill. The pill was not big, and one of the demon worms swallowed it directly. Yevsky looked puzzled and asked, "That's it? It feels different from the poison I imagined." Jill also nodded. She thought it was the type that would dissolve in water and then poison the creatures in the entire water area. Luo Guang did intend to make that at first, but the cockroach medicine gave him inspiration and changed it to this form of poison bait. The poisoned demon worms will spread the poison after being eaten by other worms, and the different genes targeted can minimize the damage to the ecosystem of the watershed. Originally, if he didn't consider other creatures, he wouldn't have to use his secret ability, but if he only wanted that kind of poison, the people in the Bear Country and the BSAA Research Institute wouldn't have to worry so much. After watching the demon worm that ate the pill die quickly, Yevsky asked, "Can't this pill only kill one demon worm?" Although he didn't like Luo Guang's previous answer, as long as the other party had real stuff, he would naturally not be dissatisfied. Jill was relieved. She was a little overwhelmed by Luo Guang's rejection before. Fortunately, her boyfriend prepared a practical demonstration. You will know after watching it. As soon as Luo Guang finished speaking, other demon worms came forward to eat the dead demon worms, and then under Yevsky's surprised eyes, all the demon worms died. Meow, the next copy is probably Resident Evil 5. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong. Meow. Chapter 445. The former Tri-Union Company's West African Secret Research Institute is now Wesker's base camp. Excella was standing in front of a door of the Research Institute, waiting for her beloved man. In addition to her, her subordinates, the hunters and remote-controlled drones of the HCF organization, etc. were all waiting quietly at the door. In order to save the expenses of the HCF organization, Wesker has abandoned one of the research institutes of the organization and moved all the resources here. When the countdown of the time he informed in advance reached 0, the door opened. A handsome man walked out. Excella knelt on one knee and asked a little nervously, "Lord Wesker, did you succeed?" From the outside, she couldn't see any changes from the other party, and she was a little scared. Wesker looked at Excella, who was bowing his head, and glanced around. Whether they were human or not, they bowed their heads. He was very satisfied with the pomp arranged by Excella. The great god finally appeared, how could there be no servants to greet him? The two returned to Wesker's exclusive lounge and had a heated exchange. What Wesker wants to enjoy is not those boring desires, but the pleasure of conquering and possessing, especially conquering and possessing a child of destiny like Excella can bring him more pleasure. After the communication, Wesker directly entered the working state ruthlessly and said, "Report what happened when I merged." Excella attached herself to the other's strong chest. In the communication just now, she did find that the other party was indeed very different from before, and the fusion was really successful. Before, she could get up and dress after finishing, but now her legs are weak and she doesn't want to move at all. The biochemical crisis in Peacecoff City has been basically resolved. Wesker was not surprised by this. Luo Guang was there to watch the scene, so how could it not be resolved? Although he hated the mouth of his mortal enemy, he still recognized Luo Guang's strength. What he really wanted to know was how Luo Guang solved this biochemical crisis and confirmed the weakness of the demon worm. The demon worm was fused into the Shinwei parasite, and Wesker wanted to confirm whether the weakness of the worm would affect himself. According to the intelligence we collected, the other party used 3 methods, but we can't confirm one of them. Tell me what we can confirm first. Yes, as she spoke, Axela entered the working state, and her tone was no longer soft as before. The first method is to use salt. Those demon worms can't digest salt. Wesker started to study the demon worms after getting them, and blocked the outside news, so he didn't know about this. Axela continued, our undercover in the BSAA Institute has obtained a detailed test report and sent it back. Give it to me. Wesker didn't understand the situation and directly asked the other party to get the report. Axela pouted like a little girl, but didn't complain or act coquettishly, and did what the other party told her to do. After handing the report to Wesker, she added, this test report was not made by the people of the BSAA Institute. The source of information came from the director of the European branch of the B.S.A.A. Jill Valentine. Wesker didn't expect that his old subordinate had reached such a height. In his impression, the other party was not suitable to be a minister at all. Axela nodded and said, for this aspect, should we send someone to follow up and investigate? She suspected that the man had other hidden research resources. Wesker shook his head and said, she is not a researcher. Although she gave the information, the real source is not her. Then, don't worry about this matter. I know who did it. Is it the mortal enemy you mentioned before? Axela thought of what the other party had mentioned. Wesker said, although there is no evidence, I suspect that person has obtained the real legacy of Umbrella Corporation. He had secretly visited the Caucasus region for investigation before and found that the previous secret base had been covered with ice and snow, with no signs of activity, so he thought Luo Guang had destroyed the entire base. But now Luo Guang has shown extraordinary scientific research ability in both the Harlan incident and the Peskov incident, which makes him begin to suspect that Luo Guang did not destroy the Umbrella Company's heritage, but packed it away. Real heritage. Sanley and Company also participated in the battle for the Umbrella Company's heritage. Axela wondered if they were fighting for fakes. Wesker was in a good mood and answered her doubts, saying, you know Spencer, Umbrella Company has such a big thing, have you collected anything about him? Didn't he flee for fear of crime? You can understand it this way. Wesker felt that the other party's statement was wrong. Spencer would not flee, but he didn't want to speak for the image of that old man. He continued, what he has in his hands is the real legacy of Umbrella Company. Unlike in the game, Wesker, who could not break through the Caucasus base, did not get a copy of Spencer's assassination list. All the people above knew the location where Spencer had been hiding, and they were all solved one by Sergei. Although Wesker didn't know that Spencer had been killed by Luo Guang, he felt that Spencer was dead, and that Luo Guang had killed that old man. There was only one reason, he could no longer feel the surveillance eyes hidden in the depths of darkness. When Spencer was alive, he had always sent people to monitor his every move. No matter what, he would never be able to escape from this surveillance. What is the real legacy? An institute? Or some precious research materials and samples? Axela's words brought Wesker back from his thoughts, and he replied, I don't know. What are the other 2 ways to solve the demon worm? He didn't want to talk about Spencer anymore. Another way to find out is chickens, Axela said in detail. Those chickens are said to be a variety called yellow-flowered chickens. They have no mutations. They can eat devil worms and have no ill health after eating them. Reaction. Wesker, as a god, would not be pecked to death by a chicken, so he did not ask about the chicken in detail, but directly asked, what happened to the remaining one? Regarding the third method, we can only collect 2 pieces of information so far. Axela sorted out her sentences and said, the first is related to the river water. At that time, an area of the Velikaya River was blocked. The second point is that the effect was outstanding. A large number of demon worm corpses were salvaged and burned. Wesker frowned and said, "I want you to spread your manpower, and you must investigate what methods they used. It is extremely effective against demonic worms, but what about using it against yourself?" He believed in the power of the divine parasite, but after being beaten many times by Luo Guang, he would no longer be blindly confident. Receive. After testing that the salt had no effect on him, Wesker deliberately added a chicken to his dinner. The next plan can be implemented. Are you ready? Wesker picked up the towel and wiped the corners of his mouth gracefully. After Excella poured him a glass of red wine, she said, "Everything is ready. You can invite the company's senior management at any time to catch them all." She paused and then said, "Master Wesker, you have integrated the new Son of God, so do we need to update it? Everyone in this institute has Plaka parasite type 3 in their bodies, so before, with just a look from Excella, the guards could hold Peter back and prevent him from getting close to her." Speaking of Peter, he fell from heaven to hell and then returned to heaven. When he was stuffed into the Plaka parasite, he thought he was going to die, but he survived and gained new powers, allowing him to willingly repay the favor. During this period, no one discovered the Shinra virus hidden in Peter's body. Back to what Wesker and the others were discussing. "No need." Wesker raised his hand and Excella stopped putting down the red wine bottle. "I can't move my body." Excella was not nervous. "Humph." Wesker snorted coldly, "I have thought of this a long time ago. The main body of the Kamui parasite is the Plaka parasite. Although he failed to obtain the amber, he customized and strengthened the Plaka parasite through the original viruses in his body, and it was actually much more powerful than the original amber. Now that he has merged with the powerful parasite that belongs only to him, his strength has greatly increased, and he has also gained various abilities." After eating and drinking, Wesker went to the training ground to familiarize himself with his new abilities, while Excella contacted people in his family to start the plan he had made before. Wesker and Excella have been preparing this plan for a long time. At the company meeting in the middle of the year, Excella proposed her grand blueprint. Sanley & Company is also considered a family business, so the meetings they hold are more like family meetings than shareholders' meetings. Because there were a large number of people and they were scattered around the world, this meeting was held online. The meeting was basically filled with guys who didn't understand biological and chemical weapons, but they understood the profits involved. The CEOs of other branches are also members of the Travis family, and there is competition among them. As the son of the current family patriarch, North American CEO Robert Travis was the first to raise objections, saying that the company should focus on its own advantageous industries. Robert doesn't want to be in the biological and chemical weapons business because he is kind-hearted. After all, he was the one who was responsible for cooperating with the FBC before. However, the Abyss virus he obtained at that time was not suitable for use as a biochemical weapon, so he carefully searched for another biochemical virus. Instead of finding a virus, we found a devil worm. That's right, the scientific research team that Peter intercepted and killed at Laddie Crater in Glacier Valley, Quebec, Canada was sent by Robert, so in the end he failed to establish his own biological and chemical weapons industry. So the reason why he objected was because he didn't want the other party to become bigger and stronger and threaten his position. Ilazek looked down on the other party and most of the people in the family. Faced with Robert's objections that were full of errors, she deliberately held back and did not give him a complete rebuttal. She needs someone to question her biological and chemical weapons research department so she can better implement her plan to lure those people into her urn. The purchase and sale of biological and chemical weapons by Sanley & Company was decided by the owner of the family. Are you trying to deny his wise decision? The person who said this was not from the Axelana faction, he just took a fancy to the cake of biological and chemical weapons. Robert didn't dare to use his father's name to suppress others, and looked at the screen of the head of the family, Hunter Travis. Hunter sat firmly on the diaotai, closed his eyes, and listened quietly to everyone expressing their thoughts. The noisy channel quieted down, he slowly opened his eyes and said, "Robert, pharmaceuticals are one of the three major carriages of our company. I don't think there is anything wrong with opening up new markets." Yes, Robert didn't dare to say anything more. Hunter then turned his head to the monitor on Excella's side and said, "However, I can understand other people's concerns. After all, this is a head-cutting industry, and it won't work without sufficient profits. Since the official sales, the company's biological and chemical weapons department has provided us with more than $10 million in profits. This is only the first year, and the costs are all spent on research." Excella introduced, "As long as we wait for our next product to go online, the profit can reach 500%, and the cost will be reduced a lot." "Words are not enough. How do we know whether what you said is true or false?" Robert looked unconvinced. This hit the mark of Excella, and she said to Hunter, "Master, I have a suggestion." "Go ahead." "Since everyone has questions about this industry, I sincerely invite you to go to our Biological Weapons Research Institute to learn more about it." Excella said, "Not only our branch, I hope other branches can also join this market and share a piece of the pie together." "Do you want to drag the entire company down with you?" a person who bet on Robert questioned her. "The current situation is that only the West African branch is doing this. If something goes wrong, they can still throw the pot away, but all the branches are doing this business. How can others believe that it has nothing to do with the head office? Without investigation, there is no right to speak. You should first understand it and then draw a conclusion," she added. "This is a big cake. If we don't grab it, it will be taken away by the enemy." Others wanted to refute, but Hunter spoke up. "We should indeed investigate it." He did not use words such as visit and research, but chose the word investigation. Because he really didn't know much about what the Biological Weapons Department was doing. Although Excella is also a member of the family, she is only a collateral branch and cannot even inherit the family name. Hunter is not the kind of person who uses relatives, otherwise he would not agree to promote Excella, but for the main branch of the family, he has a lot of things to consider, and needs to balance the main branch and the branch. He really doesn't know a lot of things about the Biological Weapons Research Department. In order to confirm the situation and arrange supervisors, Excella's proposal is a good choice. Just to cooperate with Wesker's time to come out of seclusion, Excella postponed the time of inviting the visiting group to come, saying that the new product still needs time to adjust. After listening to the other party's report, Wesker nodded with satisfaction and said, "When will the visiting group come?" "The day after tomorrow," but the head of the Hunter family did not come, but sent his secretary. This is not a problem for Axis, and continued, but the secretary is also the head of the family's personal secretary. After that, just let the secretary infect the other party. Wesker nodded and said, "Then let's prepare gifts for the guests next." Meow, I wrote 2.2 words of Dream of Red Mansions this year. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 446. Is this the research institute you secretly built? And you are so wary of us? Robert took off his eye mask and looked unhappy. He started to provoke the relationship between Excella and the visiting group. Alvaro, the secretary of Hunter, the head of the Travis family, folded the eye mask and stuffed it into his chest pocket, saying, "Didn't you say before that this business is full of risks? Then such confidentiality measures are still necessary." Alvaro didn't give Robert face, because he agreed to Excella's request at the beginning, and it was Robert who opposed that he had to contact the head of the family to confirm the situation. Hunter, who received the contact, was dissatisfied with him for disturbing him with trivial matters. In front of others, he gave him the power to lead the team on the phone. Everyone else had to listen to his command, so Alvaro didn't have to give the boss's son any face now. He deliberately took over the conversation to suppress the other party and establish his authority in the visiting group, because he was now giving orders on behalf of Hunter. Robert was not a playboy, but he was arrogant. He naturally understood the meaning of the other party's words and didn't dare to refute. He knew that if he went against the other party, his father would not side with him, but would think that he was challenging the authority of the head of the family. The brief silence in the previous family meeting was because everyone except Excella was afraid of Hunter's anger. Excella changed into a researcher's outfit, wrapping her graceful figure. "Everyone, please follow me. Next, I will explain to you in detail the latest products of our institute." Everyone followed her to the conference room without doubt. The group found a seat and sat down. Excella stood in front of the projection screen, looking at the people chatting in groups below, feeling unhappy that they did not focus on her. According to the original plan, after Robert and the others came in, she could send a signal to release the Plaka parasite type 3 here to parasitize the people here. But now she wanted to play with these people who looked down on her, so she really started to introduce the next batch of mass-produced products. Her plan was very thorough, and she naturally prepared a presentation for introduction. The name of the next product appeared on the conference screen: Plaka parasite type 3. "Aren't we researching viruses? When will you study those bugs?" Robert asked immediately, and stressed the word bugs, as if he meant something else. Excella smiled and didn't refute. She ignored the other party and continued to introduce, "Biochemical weapons have always had a disadvantage, that is, there is a problem with intelligence, and the biochemical weapons made by this parasite can retain the most basic intelligence of the host." After getting to the point, the others stopped chatting, and someone immediately asked, "How is the combat effectiveness of this biochemical weapon?" Another person also asked, "What about concealment?" Excella introduced while operating the presentation, "This is exactly what I will mention next." The other party did not ignore the questions of the two people, which made Robert, who felt that he was being treated specially, even more unhappy, but he did not slam the table. As the introduction deepened, everyone became more and more interested in this biochemical weapon. The original biological weapons were not well concealed and had low intelligence, so the buyers were mostly warlords in the chaotic land. However, the one introduced now can be used as bodyguards and mercenaries, etc., so the market is even bigger. After all, biological weapons do not require death pensions. After finally introducing this biological weapon, Excella stopped, and the presentation also showed that there was no next page. She had no idea about controlled parasites. After playing with monkeys enough, she was going to let the other party experience the pleasure of going from heaven to hell, and said, "Seeing is believing, everyone should also want to see the specific effect." That's right, some people spoke and nodded, and among these people, only Robert looked disdainful. He also has a biological weapons research institute, but that institute has been struggling to find a suitable biological virus, and so far it can only produce some T-virus biological weapons left over by Umbrella. So Robert was jealous of Excella's achievements. "Then let me show you how to make this new type of biochemical weapon." After saying this, Excella pressed a hidden button on the remote control in her hand, and the electrical signal was sent out. The mechanism in the conference room was directly turned on, and the Plaka parasites began to attack their respective targets under her control. "What do you mean by this?" Robert heard a little ill intention from the other party's words. Someone heard a strange sound under the table, so he lowered his head to check, and was directly pounced on by the parasite. "What is this?" he shouted, trying to ask for help, but was blocked by the thick and hard parasite. All the parasites attacked everyone in the tour group at almost the same time, so the others had no time to respond to him now. But their struggles were in vain. Those who had not exorcised were the first to be parasitized, and the others who had not been attacked shouted for mercy. Excella! Stop them! Someone looked at the only person in the conference room who had not been attacked, and why didn't he understand that this was the placa parasite that the other party had introduced before? Secretary Alvaro roared, Excella, you are rebelling. The head of the family is, oh, before he could finish his words, the parasite successfully entered his mouth. Robert is the strongest among the people here, and he was once the champion of a fitness competition. In order to compete for the position of the head of the family, he has no shortcomings in intelligence, physical fitness, and beauty. After all, the family will not let a sick person be the head of the family. Let him control the head of the parasite with both hands, ignore the sharp feet on its body piercing into his body, and successfully stalemate. He did not curse, but was just doing the last madness, I am right? My father must be blind to believe in a side branch like you. Sooner or later, the Travis family will be destroyed by a venomous woman like you. Robert knew that the other party would not let him go. Excella looked at the struggling people coldly, and for the first time looked at the man she had always despised, and refuted his words. No, I'm bringing new prosperity to the family. A new era is coming, and I'm trying to get a ticket for the Travis family to board Noah's Ark. Only in this way can our family have a place in the new era. You lunatic! Don't talk about the family. You're just an outsider. Saying you're a branch is the family's promotion of you. In a rage, Robert used his arms to crush the head of the placa parasite. Excella pressed another button, and more placa parasites of type 3 appeared, jumped onto the table, and attacked Robert, who wanted to stand up and kill Excella. Her words were irrefutable. Looking at Robert, who was covered in wounds and tattered clothes, Excella suppressed her anger and said, Stupid guy. But I will forgive your rudeness, because you will become an important chess piece of Lord Wesker. Other people who had been parasitized grabbed Robert, and the parasite had pried open his mouth and put its body in, making it impossible for him to refute the other party. He tried his best to break free from those who had not yet fully obtained the power of the parasite, and pulled the parasite out of his mouth. His mouth was scraped full of blood. He did not take the opportunity to escape, but cursed, Excella, I curse you to have to die. As if it was a last word, Robert, who had used up his last bit of strength, gave up resistance and was overwhelmed by other people and parasites. Humph! There were many people cursing her. Excella didn't care at all, got up and left the meeting room, and reported to Wesker. The plan to seize Sanley and Company has completed the first stage. The next step is to spread this placa parasite type 3 throughout the company. At this time, Wesker was in the training room, watching various teaching videos while integrating them into his own fighting skills. Among them, perhaps because of Luo Guang, he has recently watched various martial arts in the mysterious country the most, and finally he chose Jeet Kune Do. The reason is that Wesker is not sure how much Luo Guang's strength has grown, but from the recent time when he was knocked unconscious by the opponent without any ability to fight back. He felt that he had to overestimate the opponent, and the concept of Jeet Kune Do was most suitable for his needs. Wesker punched out, and the flames enveloped his fist, directly punching through the steel plate that was 4 or 5 books thick, and there were traces of burns on the edge of the hole. He nodded with satisfaction. This inch punch has been practiced well. Next, he just needs to train muscle memory to ensure that the power of inch force can be exerted every time in the future. Have those people been dealt with? Wesker took the towel handed over by Excella and took the initiative to ask about the situation. All the targets have been parasitized. The medical team has gone to treat the wounds, and the intelligence department is also trying to solve the problem of their clothes. Exeladu asked, do we need to be so cautious? Those people are all high-ranking people, and those subordinates will not say much even if they have doubts. Wesker replied, if the head of the Travis family also came here, I wouldn't have so much trouble. Are you saying that Hunter is suspicious of us? Probably not, but as your biological weapons manufacturing department becomes more and more important, that person will definitely pay more and more attention to us, even send people to supervise and airdrop a leader to you. Exelidus said coquettishly, you won't let them do this, will you? Wesker sneered, we act faster than him. The sight returned to Luo Guang and Jill, who were packing their luggage. In fact, as early as a month and a half ago, the Peskov incident had been basically resolved. The demon worms in the Velikaya River were basically invisible, and the remaining demon worms were not large-scale, but they still needed time to clean them up carefully, so it took nearly 2 months to officially announce the end of the incident. When Yevsky said goodbye to them, he also mentioned that the citizens were going to install a bronze statue in the center of the city to express their gratitude to the anti-biochemical organization. The image was the BSAA and the soldiers of the Bear Country marching together, and there would be a proud rooster following closely at their feet. Can't your poison for the devil worm really be made public? This was the second time Jill asked this question. When he persuaded for the first time, Yevsky was also there, and they actually acted together for him. Compared with the past, Jill has improved in his rhetoric. When he persuaded Luo Guang for the first time, he not only used morality but also used interests to persuade him. For example, promoting this poison for the devil worm is like the cockroach medicine that every household must have. The reason for such a realistic play is that rejecting the BSAA is different from rejecting the army of the Bear Country, so Luo Guang wants to shut up Yevsky in advance. Luo Guang shook his head, what I said before was not a lie. It's useless even if I announce it. Others can't produce it at all. Although the thing is called poison, it is actually a genetic virus weapon. Jill thought that his previous words were just to deceive Yevsky, so she asked again. It didn't sound like she was lying, so she told the reason why she asked again, but what if the devil worms appear in other places? Luo Guang laughed and said, don't worry, I already have a solution. After Yevsky confirmed the effect of the poison, he contacted the president of the Bear Country, and after explaining the situation, he agreed to his plan. This was a little beyond his expectations. He didn't expect the other party to agree to his somewhat extraordinary plan so decisively. The result was naturally gratifying. Peskov and other places where traces of the devil worms were found were deployed, and a large number of devil worms were caught in one fell swoop. So there is no need to use the ultrasonic weapon. But it has been developed, it would be a pity not to use it. He had specially asked Alex for help before, which seemed a bit wasteful, so Luo Guang modified the weapon. The previous poison was inspired by cockroach bait, so the inspiration for this modification came from the ultrasonic mosquito repellent, which might be a waste of IQ tax. All you need to do is turn the ultrasonic wave that can shatter the demon worm into the ultrasonic wave Bandit hates. Luo Guang told Jill his plan truthfully and said, this is also a business. Is this the backup you mentioned before? Jill put on her backpack and tilted her head. Luo Guang nodded and said, this thing was originally an ultrasonic weapon that can directly shatter the internal organs of the demon worm, etc. You are worried that this new weapon will bring more trouble? Jill understood it as soon as she heard it. Every time a new weapon appears, many things will change, so she can understand the reason for her boyfriend's concerns. Yes, but it's great that the Russian Bear Country accepted my initial suggestion. Luo Guang also packed up his things. Jill nodded and asked, what are your plans next? Holiday, Luo Guang answered the question immediately, and now that he has the ability to clone the blood plague, he no longer needs to run around the world and can be with Jill at any time. Jill liked this answer, not because she was influenced by Luo Guang and liked to take a vacation, but because she liked the sense of security that Luo Guang brought her when he stayed by her side. In her opinion, as long as Luo Guang was around, there was nothing that could not be solved. Meow meow, end. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 447. It is September now, and 3/4 of 2002 have passed. In addition to the two major biochemical crises, various biochemical crises have also occurred in other places, and most of these biochemical crises are related to the beekeeper organization. Although it may not be good to say this, the turnover of GIMZ has also increased a lot due to the active beekeepers. As the real boss, Luo Guang made a new round of adjustments to the GIMZ business after confirming the recent situation. The anti-biochemical teaching originally carried out in Cape Town, South Africa has moved to the newly opened GIMZ branch in Europe, while Cape Town focuses on mercenary anti-biochemical incidents. In fact, Luo Guang separated these businesses for a reason, which is to prevent the previous attacks from harming innocent people. Fortunately, there were no customers at that time, otherwise the other party would launch an attack when there were customers, which would bring a lot of trouble to the GIMZ people. But those guests chose to come to GIMZ to learn anti-biochemical training because the instructors are real active combatants. For this reason, Luo Guang specially found a few retired soldiers from BSAA, and combined with the rotation system, sent an elite team to garrison the European branch every month. Not only did it ensure the teaching quality of the branch, but it also gave the members of the duty team time to take a vacation. No one else had any objection to the boss's arrangement. In addition to the boss having already considered their opportunity to earn extra money as part-time coaches, there was another thing that made them work hard without reservation. That was the sudden strengthening of Hank and Victor. Under the stimulation of Hank and Victor, everyone in GIMZ couldn't sit still. Led by Caroline, they all swarmed to the boss Wusong, intending to ask about the situation and see if they could do the same as Hank and the others. The result was that Luo Guang controlled the clone to drive them out, leaving only a sentence that the fate had not yet arrived, and they would talk about it later. Although everyone was curious and envious of Hank and the other two, they finally got some information out of Hank. Hank naturally didn't dare to make his own decision on this matter. Luo Guang deliberately let Hank say it. In short, work hard and talk about it later. As a veteran of GIMZ, it is normal for Hank to be valued by the boss, but Victor is a second-term student and not a veteran. Some people thought about this and thought there might be other conditions, but it was useless to think too much, and he couldn't beat the boss. As for the boss's favoritism, all the elite personnel didn't have this idea. Since Hank gave a clear way, they just followed the other party's words and worked hard. As usual, after a day of training, everyone went back to the room to rest. The elite team of GIMZ is basically people with anti-biochemical training, but training still requires perseverance. Moreover, these trainings are not static. For example, Luo Guang gained a lot of new experience and understanding when facing the demon worm and its mutants after the Peace-Cough incident. The types of biochemical crises are not always the same. Although the enemies are all zombies and various mutant monsters, they look similar, but it is often the differences that can cost lives. So every time there is something new, Luo Guang needs to borrow Wusong's identity to teach Hank and others. The GIMZ troops and the European branch of the BSAA have a cooperative relationship, but this time, except for Luo Guang, no one participated in the anti-biochemical operation in Peace-Cough. Because they need to help the European branch deal with sporadic biochemical crises in other parts of Europe, so that the BSAA can concentrate most of its strength to solve the problems in Peace-Cough. Luo Guang returned to his office, stretched, and began to prepare for tomorrow's plan. With his current endurance and mental strength attributes, it is not a problem to go without food, water, or sleep for a few days. Staying up late had little impact on him, so he used this ability to work overtime to deal with G.I.M.Z's affairs. Caddy knocked on the door and came in with a tray in her hand, on which was a cup of steaming cocoa and 2 double-layer thick steak burgers. "Boss, this is the midnight snack you wanted?" "Well, "Give it to me." Luo Guang moved the keyboard aside, took the tray and put it on his body. He drank a sip of hot cocoa and made a comfortable sound. Looking at the boss who was eating happily, Caddy's face also showed a smile, and a hint of happiness was unconsciously dyed on his face. Perhaps it was because the chronic disease was cured and Jack was thriving, which made her walk out of the past, no longer miss and be obsessed with that man, and at the same time have the idea of looking forward. Facing her benefactor, Caddy naturally had different thoughts in her heart, but she knew that the Chinese attached great importance to chastity, so she thought of her unmarried husband and finally did not dare to take the first step and disrupt the status quo. For her now, being able to help him manage the GIMZ troops and watching Jack grow up is already a great happiness, and she dare not ask for more. Luo Guang quickly finished his midnight snack. "It's delicious. You can go and rest next, no need to wait for me." Okay, Katie did not insist, picked up the plate, and prepared to rest after cleaning the dishes. Watching the other party leave, Luo Guang took the keyboard and continued to work until 2 o'clock in the morning, when it was quiet, when humans were most likely to relax. "Are you ready?" "Yes." In the woods outside the GIMZ South African training ground, an uninvited guest was welcomed again after a few months. Bat number 1 called the headquarters. "We are about to start the raid. Go." Excella's voice sounded from the headset of the captain of the Bat squad. She was standing next to Wesker, and after talking to the frontline personnel, she turned her head and asked, "Lord Wesker, what do you think of the result of this operation? Can GIMZ survive?" Wesker shook his head and said, "You should ask how many of the teams we sent out can survive. Although the Plaka parasite type 3 can improve the physical fitness of humans, modern warfare is not about who has the bigger fist or who has the stronger body. Combat skills are also an important part. The people in the Bat squad he sent out this time were just mercenaries that could be found everywhere. Even if they were parasitized, their combat level would not improve dramatically. In that case, why should we send them to die? Wouldn't this alert the enemy?" Wesker said, "Didn't we talk about this before? We need to know the combat effectiveness of our men now. Only a strong opponent can test the results. As for alerting the enemy won't know their identities." He looked at the trees that were constantly retreating on the screen and said, "And didn't we suffer a setback at the hands of GIMZ before? Then we have to teach them a lesson." Excella asked, "In that case, why don't we just solve these enemies? They are anti-biochemical mercenaries, and they will cause us trouble sooner or later. A small mercenary group is not in my eyes." Wesker was dismissive of this, so he has never read the intelligence book of GIMZ so far, and he doesn't know the existence of Caddy and Jack. He continued, "Our goal should be more focused on the BSAA organization. There are only a handful of people in our company, and they are more persistent in anti-biochemical issues. The FBC and the military of various countries, Trinity Corporation, have a certain degree of infiltration, as long as they find a way to gradually use parasites to infiltrate. But what you said makes sense. I'll leave it to you to eliminate GIMZ." Wesker finally gave the order. Axela took the order. "Yes." With just a few words, they seemed to have decided the fate of GIMZ, and then turned their eyes to the screen. The screen was a live broadcast from the Bat Squad's combat recorder. At this time, they were about to leave the woods and attack GIMZ. 2 gunshots filtered by silencers rang out, and the 2 precision shooters of the Bat Squad took the M14 DMR rifle and aimed directly at the 2 guards in the security booth. 2 bangs sounded, and the 7.62 x 51 mm bullet was stopped in the glass. Since the last attack, Luo Guang has renovated the entire GIMZ training ground, raised the fence, and arranged various anti-climbing measures. This place is far away from the city, and no normal person would choose this place as a target for robbery or theft, so Luo Guang even installed some less legal things. Even if he really met a brainless person, Luo Guang would not care, After all, the other party had never been here and had nothing to do with them. The thickened bulletproof glass of more than 75 mm blocked the bullet and alarmed the security personnel inside. Without saying a word, they pressed the emergency button of the attack, then picked up their weapons and ran out of the inner door, and even locked the door again considerately. "Let's go." Both the thickness of the bulletproof glass of the security booth and the other party's reaction were unexpected to everyone in the Bat Squad, but the arrow was on the string and had to be fired. The order given to them by the superiors did not allow them to give up because of this setback. Moreover, although these people were parasitized by parasites, they felt that they had gained powerful strength and were outnumbered, so they were even less likely to be scared away. The security guards left their posts after ringing the alarm bell, not because they looked down on the monthly salary of $5,000, which was almost twice the per capita income. Under Luo Guang's arrangement, these people did not need to fight the enemy desperately, but to provide intelligence and early warnings to others. The two security guards who ran away ran directly to the monitoring room, which was a relatively solid space. The two who entered also took away the doorplate with the words "monitoring room" written on the door. After pressing the alarm bell, there was no piercing alarm in the entire base, but the alarm sounded from the watches of every staff member. Everyone in the GIMZ training ground, including those who were resting, successfully received the alarm. The enemy's intelligence soon came from the monitoring room. Samus and Jack, mother and son, came to the office of Boss Wu Song under the escort of Tanya. When the incident happened, Tanya was drinking and chatting with Samus. Because of the drinking, she did not go back to lead her team after the escort, but gave the command to the deputy captain of the team. Luo Guang had already turned on the projector and observed the enemy's situation. "Boss Wu, what's the situation now?" Although it didn't take Samus much time to come here, the newer the information, the better. Luo Guang replied, "There are almost a company of enemies, this number is not bad." He didn't say the identity of the other party. Samus could understand the reason, but she still made a guess. "Aida is no longer here, who attacked us?" Not sure. Luo Guang had no clue, shook his head, and asked, "Tanya, how much did you and Samus drink tonight?" "Not much, just 2 bottles of 14.5-degree red wine." Tanya didn't look drunk, but her face was a little red. Samus also replied, "In fact, it's just 1 bottle per person, this little bit of wine is nothing to us." Luo Guang smiled and said, "Samus, I believe you are not drunk, but if you are not drinking, you will definitely not say that. If Samus is not drinking, he will definitely say that this little bit of alcohol will also affect the brain's judgment and so on." The other party also thought of this and apologized to him. Originally, Luo Guang planned to go out and meet the enemy and confirm the identity of the enemy by controlling the enemy. Now that Samus has drunk, he should just take command. Luo Guang replied, "Forget it, it's not your fault. After all, you have entered the rest time. Who let those enemies choose such a time?" Hank's voice rang in the room, "Boss, everyone is ready for battle and can be ordered at any time." After receiving the notice of the attack, they immediately got up and returned to their respective dormitories, opened the weapons and equipment cabinets and began to wear them. Luo Guang also took this opportunity to tell them not to go to the office area to meet him for the time being, and to defend directly in the dormitory area. Although this office building is easy to defend and difficult to attack, it is still a stupid act to put all the people in the same place. Luo Guang picked up the intercom and replied, "The enemy has split into 2 groups, one went to your dormitory area, and the other came to our side." He was in the office area, where he usually worked and lived, separated from others, but the distance between the 2 sides was not far. The monitoring room was also in this office area, and the security personnel inside could also provide various intelligence. The problem now is that there are not many combatants in the office area, not even an elite team. Luo Guang thought about this and wondered whether he should send someone to help. The other party knows our movements very well. Sam sat on the sofa, interrupted Luo Guang's thoughts, and told him the problem he found. The people of their GIMZ unit are concentrated in these two places, and it just so happens that the other party only has 2 troops. But according to the report from the security booth, the other party obviously misjudged our new defense measures. Sams continued, maybe the enemy had already scouted before. Luo Guang thought of the Tri-Union Company. The other party sent people to scout before the first attack. Later, he cleared the enemy's intelligence network in Cape Town, South Africa, and confirmed that there were no Tri-Union Company intelligence agents in Cape Town. It just fits the phenomenon that the other party is still executing the plan according to the previous intelligence. If this is true, then the position of the enemy's eyes that know everyone's movements is very obvious. Luo Guang said, the enemy's spies may be high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft or satellites. Samu smiled bitterly, no matter which one, we can't solve it. Luo Guang stood up with his weapon and said, it doesn't matter, leave it to you to watch, I will deal with the enemy. I can deal with those enemies who come to cause trouble by myself, so there is no need to disperse the combatants. There are many enemies, so it is better to keep the elite under my command in a 1-to-1 ratio with the enemy. Be careful, Cuddy looked worried. I will protect my mother, Jack looked serious. Be safe, I will help you keep an eye on the team below. Samus took over the command directly. Tanya was not worried about the boss at all, and waved goodbye directly. Meow, thank you all for your subscription and many votes. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 448. All windows in the dormitory area are made of bulletproof glass, and the walls are also equipped with bulletproof steel plates, and explosion-proof and fireproof treatment is also done. From the outside, it is just an ordinary modern dormitory, but the interior is made according to the specifications of a war fortress. According to the agreement between GIMZ and the Cape Town city government, this training ground will become an emergency shelter or evacuation point when necessary. Isn't this chaotic attack from the opposite side really funny? If Carlos was not worried about being misunderstood, he would have said that the other side was conducting an exercise. These enemies ran wildly in the open field, firing smoke bombs and shooting without aiming. Wang Shuhong, the captain of the Homo sapiens team, replied, but we still can't take it lightly, stray bullets don't have eyes. He didn't expect that after completing the training mission in the mysterious country, his first mission would be to deal with these lawless criminals who rushed in. Hank agreed, that's right, everyone, remember not to take it lightly. Wolf Team Dr. Michaela spoke for Hank, saying, haha, this is not a game, you probably don't want me to treat your wounds. People who had received Michaela's treatment without anesthesia shuddered. Everyone recognized her treatment skills, but the treatment process was too painful. Angel Team Demolitionist Pold whispered, fortunately, our team has an angel doctor. The team's medical soldier Shwerui smiled and shook her head, and with a 3-shot burst, she solved another enemy that rushed out of the smoke range. As Hank said, the enemy's attack was unsystematic, and they just rushed over all at once, so everyone was talking and laughing to solve the enemy like they were shooting turkeys. Everyone, something is wrong, don't chat for now. The security guard's nervous words came from the headset. As soon as everyone stopped talking, he continued, several enemies you knocked down stood up again, like immortals. Hank and others were not too surprised to hear this, because they were warriors who specialized in dealing with undead creatures. Although the security personnel saw it for the first time, they had seen many cases of biochemical monsters during training, so they were not particularly panicked. Aim at the head to deal with the enemy, Hank gave a new order. But even if he didn't say it, others would make the same judgment. Hector, the blaster of the Wolf team, asked Rupier directly, Wolf Mother, I made a few holes on the ground, the boss shouldn't find me, right? No, use whatever means you have. Before Rupier answered, Samu's words appeared in his ears. Hector showed a happy smile on his face, and he had another chance to show his skills. He picked up the MaleProtagonist grenade launcher on the ground. This is a 40mm continuous grenade launcher carrying weapon developed by South Africa's Armsker company, and it is an excellent weapon with many years of service experience. The ammunition capacity is 6 rounds, and it uses a revolver-type feed similar to a revolver. Hector said to his teammates around him, "Cover me." After that, he stood up with the grenade launcher, trusting his teammates, and fired all the bullets in just 3 seconds. These 3 seconds also include the time for aiming, to ensure that each round can kill multiple enemies or disperse the smoke. After the shooting, Hector shrank back and switched to the main weapon. Victor seamlessly connected, raised his gun sideways and continued to attack, buying time for Wolf Mother and Dr. Michaela to change bullets. They were divided into teams and scattered in various areas of the dormitory for defense according to the composition of their members. But all teams are still a whole, so in order to avoid a short-term lack of firepower in a certain area, giving the enemy an opportunity to take advantage, Victor did not participate in the cover attack just now. However, at this time, he did not choose to suppress the enemy's strafing, but to shoot accurately. After strengthening his physical qualities, Victor still did not relax at all. These days of training made him stronger, quickly adapting to and exerting the powerful ability of the Shinra virus. Although the gunfire continued, the shooting mode of Victor's weapon was single-shot mode. The enemies that were knocked down by Hector were killed, and those who poked their heads out to attack were also knocked down first. One person achieved the suppression effect that 2 people had achieved before. The same situation happened to Hank. They were responsible for the first floor, using pillars and walls as cover to eliminate all the enemies who rushed in with smoke bombs as cover. Smoke bombs did solve the problem of them getting close to the dormitory building, and even blocked Hank and his team's sight. But the Death Squad, or the elite team of GIMZ, had equipment that was several levels higher than those sent by Tri-Union Company for testing. The smoke bombs used by these enemies were just ordinary versions, so the Death Squad wearing thermal imaging were like evil spirits in the smoke, quickly harvesting the enemies. In the Secret Research Institute, Axela looked at the people she sent out being quickly eliminated, and her face was full of displeasure. She didn't expect it to be such a one-sided situation. The only thing worth praising was the bravery of her men, who fought to the death. Wesker was looking at the intelligence of the elite GIMZ team at this time, and said, "Death Hank, Wolf Team Wolf Mother, no wonder the rabble we sent out was beaten so badly." Axela looked at Wesker with some confusion, but the other party did not look back at her, and directly answered the other party's doubts. "These people are the elites of Umbrella Company USS, the kind of elites who specialize in fighting elites. Sanley and Company has not found out the background of the above-mentioned people, because it is one of the secrets of Umbrella Company. After all, USS is a secret force used to do dirty work." Only Wesker, the Umbrella trader, had met these people and knew their true identities. Surprised that the mercenaries still had such special identities, Axela asked, "Then do we want them to withdraw first? Since the opponent's combat power is much stronger than that of himself and others, there is no need to waste troops, and it will also expose the existence of the Plaka parasite." Wesker looked like he was expecting everything and replied, "No rush. I'll try to control the parasites and cause them trouble." The fact that he was able to travel across most of Africa and control the parasites in South Africa from West Africa was not because he had strong mental power. Wesker just did something similar to Luo Guang, setting up a signal relay station to let those with parasites in their bodies forward the signals he sent out, so that he could personally control parasites at greater distances. Luo Guang can also do the same thing with the Shinra virus, but who makes him not a villain who wants to rule the world? Let the parasites act alone? Their combat power is enough to deal with unarmed ordinary people, but not enough to deal with these elites. Axela looked at the smoke-filled camera lens and suddenly realized, is this the person who wants to take advantage of the opportunity to control G.I.M.Z? Not only that, I can also directly use parasites to disrupt the opponent's front and so on. In addition to exploring his own abilities and skills, Wesker also developed various uses of parasites. The more he learned about his divine parasite, the more he felt that it was correct to change his research and development route. The parasite's potential and plasticity were even greater than he expected. Even though he had been fused for a while, he still felt that he was still getting stronger, as if there was no end. However, after sensing the location and condition of the parasites in the Bat team, Wesker chose to control the parasites of people going to the office area. Because the people in the dormitory area were initially shot in the body, many of the parasites were either dead or disabled. In addition, the enemies are all elites, so the benefits of using parasites to attack rashly are not great. On the contrary, the boss of GIMZ is in the office area. It is more cost-effective to deal with the enemy leader. There are not many enemies and the success rate is also higher. On the other side, Luo Guang remotely controlled Wu Song, the Blood Plague clone, holding 2 Thompson submachine guns to unilaterally slaughter the gangsters who dared to attack here. Those enemies basically wear bulletproof helmets and bodyproof vests, which can only block pistol bullets, so the GIMZ elite team, which mainly uses assault rifles, finds it strange that enemies still get up after being shot. Therefore, Luo Guang, who uses a submachine gun, can only hit the opponent's face with bullets to avoid the protective parts of the opponent's body. According to his current strength, it would be easy to destroy the enemy with full firepower. The problem was that with his keen eyesight, he saw a camera on the enemy's equipment. No matter what the camera was used for, he was cautious and decided to hide his strength for the time being. Because the only guard here was Luo Guang, the Bat team leader and his men easily approached the office building, blew open the door and broke in. But that was it, they were stopped by Luo Guang alone. That's the boss of G.I.M.Z, Axela said. I didn't expect him to stop those biochemical soldiers by himself. It seems that Plaka parasite type 3 is not perfect enough. Although Wesker didn't have much hope for these biochemical soldiers at the beginning, but with 0 results so far, it doesn't make sense that they have been suppressed and beaten. They have a numerical advantage. The next step is to improve it while maintaining the advantages of type 3. I think we should find someone stronger to be the host of the parasite. Wesker changed his mind and said, the ability to control is the most important thing about the Plaka parasite. I see. Wesker turned his attention back to the screen and began to control, causing the parasites in the guys who were killed by Luo Guang to leave the host and act alone. The plan is simple. By controlling G.I.M.Z's boss while he and his elite men are not together, he can easily obtain a group of elite soldiers with high combat capabilities. He first controlled the survivors of the Bat team to throw smoke bombs, covering the parasites emerging from the bodies of the fallen people to attack the enemies. Luo Guang directly turned on the voice-controlled fan in the lobby of the office building, quickly blowing away the smoke in the venue. With a high sweep of his legs, he kicked away the attacking parasite. He thought of various things and immediately threw away the submachine gun in his left hand. He picked up the walkie-talkie and said, everyone, please be aware that the enemy has Plaka parasites in his body. Luo Guang spoke loudly, but bullets were flying in the lobby at this time, so neither the Bat team nor Wesker behind them heard the content of the shouting repeated twice. As for the matter of the Plaka parasite, because it involved the secret mission of the X organization, Luo Guang only told them that there was such a biochemical enemy and the corresponding solution. As for the pictures, origins, and other information, he did not tell anyone. We have encountered that kind of parasite. Hank's voice sounded from Luo Guang's headphones, and he helped Chen Zilong in the team to solve the parasite that was flying in his face with a flying knife. He quickly thought of the location of the Plaka parasite mentioned before, and told others about the enemy's weakness. Wesker didn't know that the people of GIMZ knew the existence of the Plaka parasite, so when the number of parasites he sensed was decreasing rapidly, he couldn't help but frowned. What's wrong? Excella couldn't do the same thing as Wesker. Wesker replied, the people of GIMZ seem to have discovered the weaknesses of our soldiers. Even if you don't ask, you can see that the biochemical soldiers on the big screen in front of you never stand up again after falling down. It's because we controlled the parasite outbreak, no. Could it be that the other party knew this Plaka parasite? Excella thought of another possibility. It's possible, but there is another possibility that the other party discovered the weakness of the biochemical monster, so they quickly adjusted the countermeasures. Wesker did not deny the other party's statement, because he knew that Luo Guang was related to the Illuminati incident. Recently, GIMZ and BSAA have been very close, so Luo Guang, as a consultant of BSAA, is likely to have told the people of GIMZ about this. However, he also proposed another possibility and continued, anti-biochemical people are still very good at finding weaknesses. Wesker was not sure about the relationship between Luo Guang and GIMZ, and the intelligence network of the Sanlian company did not regard Luo Guang as a member of GIMZ. So what should we do now? Don't worry about those abandoned pieces, give me all the information of GIMZ. As the battle continued, Wesker became more and more interested in GIMZ. Excella did as she was told. Wesker turned off the live broadcast on the screen and projected the information on it for viewing. Oh, he kept his eyes on the photo on the screen and said to himself, I didn't expect you to be still alive. Excella had been standing silently beside the other person, looking at the photo. It was a woman whose beauty and figure were not inferior to hers. An inexplicable impatience surged up in her mind, and she asked directly without any concealment, who is this person? Wesker said, as if he could not hear the jealousy implied in the other person's words, a person with a chronic disease who should not live for a few years, but now seems to be very healthy. He was not stupid enough to talk about the relationship between the other person and her. It was not because of love, but he felt that Excella was still useful. However, when he switched to the information of the next person, he stood up in surprise. Excella, an expert in micro-expressions who only targeted Wesker, asked, "My lord." Wesker did not answer, but a storm was brewing in his heart. Caddy Muller was a woman he had played with before, and Jack Muller was the son of that woman. He calculated from Jack's age, which just matched the time when he met and played with Caddy. Over the years, Wesker has met many women, and he has never taken any safety measures. For example, Excella, even if she exercised during the dangerous period, she could not conceive his child. It is precisely because of this that Wesker has always felt that he has transcended the scope of humans and entered the realm of God. However, he was only surprised for a while. Wesker sat down and licked his lips. He was very curious now, was Jack Mueller his son? If so, did this child inherit his abilities? Meow, change to a new proofreading software next year. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 449. This is the Death Team, Area A has been confirmed, and no Plaka parasite has been found. This is the Angel Team, Area B has been confirmed, no problem. Area C is fine. Teams one by one conducted zone inspections of the entire base to ensure that no fish slipped through the net. After Samus confirmed that the battlefield was clean, he went to Wusong's office and called the director of B.S.A.A.'s African branch to report the biohazard incident that occurred here. Searched Can on Google. Yes, this is a new type of biochemical weapon. According to the anatomy of our team doctor, the parasite will live on the human spine. GIMZ had long known about the existence of the Plaka parasite, but Samus reported it as his first discovery. She answered the other party's question again, yes, so attacking the head does not mean that the enemy will die directly. The parasite will appear instead of the enemy's head. However, in this case, the enemy's intelligence is basically lost, and the threat becomes smaller. This is because firearms are more threatening than parasites that can only fight in close combat, so the mutated biochemical soldiers are less threatening. I understand, the African minister asked again. By the way, do you, GIMZ, have any enemies? It actually used new biological and chemical weapons directly against you. Samus replied seriously, I don't think it's necessarily our enemy. This may be a new conspiracy brewing. All ears. Our GIMZ target is all those who created the biological crisis. From this point of view, those people are our enemies. Samus continued, this is the same for you anti-biochemical organizations, and you obviously attract more hatred than us. Because GIMZ is a mercenary organization, it can be said that it basically ignores complaints and will not take the initiative when no one is invited, so it does not attract much hatred. After thinking for a moment, the other party understood what Samus meant and said, that's why you think this is a conspiracy against us or all anti-biochemical organizations. Yes, our attack this time was just a test or appetizer. The purpose was to confirm the capabilities of their new product. From what you said, the combat effectiveness is not much different from that of ordinary human soldiers. The African minister did not realize the point of the problem. Luo Guang asked Samus to report it to BSAA to remind the other party to prepare for the coming storm. He didn't think this Plaka parasite only appeared once. Sams reminded, the point is that these biochemical soldiers are no different from ordinary people and have a certain degree of combat effectiveness, and the attack on our base will definitely not be an accident. At this point, if the other party no longer notices the key to the problem, then this position should be replaced. He quickly said, someone is controlling their actions. Parasites can also control humans while maintaining the host's intelligence, and there is no problem even visible from the outside. Sams gave the solution she discussed with her boss, so next we need to update the parasite detection method. This is not difficult. The scanner gun can confirm whether there are parasites in the human body. This Plaka parasite is so big that it can't be hidden at all. She continued, what I am most worried about now is that the enemy uses parasites to control humans, especially those with higher positions such as officials. This can truly subvert the world. I know, I will report it to the headquarters immediately. The African minister looked serious. Sams said, our boss has already contacted your headquarters. He asked me to find you because he thinks that the other party chose our GIMZ for testing, probably because the enemy's base camp is in Africa. I understand, and I will send someone over to assist. The African minister paused and added, I will first conduct a test on the people in the branch to ensure that there are no parasites in their bodies before sending them over. Sams was on the phone, and Wusong, Luo Guang, was also on the phone with O'Brien. The general content was similar to the African branch. The only difference is that he wants BSAA to promote parasite detection procedures globally. I will make an announcement here, O'Brien said. I will notify the governments of various countries immediately. Luo Guang said worriedly, please keep it secret. I'm worried that the enemy may have already infiltrated into various organizations and countries. I know that I will recommend that all parties conduct secret inspections internally to avoid a round of unnecessary inspections later. After O'Brien and Wusong finished talking about this, he said, let's find a time to have a meal next time, and we can exchange experiences. He and Wusong have also been close friends for a long time, but because Luo Guang had no clone before, the two never met in real life and only communicated through phone calls and emails. Okay, Luo Guang hung up the phone and then found Kaidi and Jack. Boss. Uncle Wu. Luo Guang and Kaidi said in unison, "Call the boss." Yes, Jack drawled his voice. If it weren't for his mother's inability, he would have wanted to call his dad directly. It can be said that everything he has now is because of Wu Song. Although the two parties were only in a labor relationship, Wu Song found a school and stood up for himself, solved those who bullied him, treated his mother's illness, and helped his mother get rid of the haze brought by her biological father. These things made the young Jack imagine that Wu Song was his father and brought happiness to his mother who had worked hard for so many years. According to my intuition, this incident has not really ended yet, and the enemy may appear next. Luo Guang talked about the general situation in the future and continued, and here, the weakest combat effectiveness is Cuddy and Jack. This is the truth, and Cuddy did not feel hurt. She and Jack have both experienced some military training, but without actual combat experience, it is equivalent to nothing. Cuddy asked, "I can stay here and work without going out, but Jack has to go to school, right?" If it was summer vacation, Jack could stay at the GIMZ base all day to wait for the incident to be resolved, but now summer vacation is over. "I can take a temporary leave of absence." "Jack, what are you talking about? How can I take a leave of absence? I can catch up." Jack thought his mother was worried about his studies, and said, "I missed so many years of study before, but I can catch up. It's not a problem to take a few months off." He was confident about this, and now the internet is well developed, he can also study online. As for tutoring, he also thought about it, but he was short of money, and it was not easy to ask his boss or mother for money. "Kaidi, safety is the most important thing. At worst, you can hire a tutor." Luo Guang also joined in the persuasion. After hearing what he said, Kaidi hesitated again and said, "Boss Wu, I'm just worried that after taking a year off, his original friends will become distant after they are promoted to the next class. She thinks it's better for children to have some friends of the same age." However, Jack said, "I don't have many friends at school. In the eyes of others, he is a bookworm who studies hard at school. He goes home immediately after class and basically doesn't stay at school, let alone go out to play with other classmates." Jack didn't think there was anything wrong with this. He couldn't talk to those classmates who had been well fed and well clothed since childhood. In his opinion, other classmates were too naive. Rightward arrow. Luo Guang knew this. Perhaps in the eyes of those who didn't know, this was the so-called loss of childhood, but in his eyes, there was no problem. Because Jack didn't feel any dissatisfaction with his current life, and even felt very happy. Happiness is the most important thing in childhood, and it's enough. Cuddy felt bad when he heard Jack's words. If it weren't for his early life, maybe Jack wouldn't be like this now. Luo Guang said, "Cuddy, it's enough for Jack to live happily now. Although he doesn't have friends of the same age, he still has many older friends, right? So there will be no problem with Jack's socialization training and emotional intelligence training." Cuddy's eyes reflected Wu Song's appearance and said, "Okay, I'll listen to you." Luo Guang's real body in Europe was also on the phone at this time. The person he was looking for was Susanna, the contact person of Organization X, and she only said one thing: the amber of Mission S008 has been leaked. According to analysis, it may be the third-generation product. Report this matter. There was a first time and there was a second time. Luo Guang squeezed the juice of the Plaka parasite to understand the situation, and then compared it with the research data of the Church of Light in Lewis's hand, confirming that the parasite in the enemy's body had undergone at least 1 or 2 evolutions. This number of evolutions was the conclusion he drew from the situation of the cutting and splicing of the parasite genes. He confirmed 2 different cutting and splicing techniques, so he thought it might be the third generation. "I know." Luo Guang hung up the phone, but did not go back to the room. He still stood on the balcony, looking at the bright moon in the sky. He was waiting for a call. S008 refers to the mission to save the president's daughter, that is, the Church of Light incident, and amber is not the same as the amber in Lewis' mouth. It is just the code name of the Plaka parasite. As expected, the call came soon. Looking at the unfamiliar phone number, Luo Guang answered the call. "Hello. I'm Kara." Luo Guang looked at the time and said, "Staying up late is bad for your skin." "What do you care?" Kara cursed and said, "Lord Simmons is asleep. Tell me if you have anything to say." At first, Simmons' assistant wanted to wake Simmons up. The reason was that the matter reported by Luo Guang involved an S-level mission, so even if the assistant could not judge the seriousness of the information or felt that the matter was not urgent, Simmons should be notified in time. As the current leader of the X organization, this is the responsibility he has to bear when he has supreme power. However, the assistant was seen by Kara on the way to Simmons' bedroom. In the eyes of others, Kara, who lived in Simmons' mansion, was like his adopted daughter, and she had the right to know about the S-level mission, so the assistant told her the matter. After understanding the situation, Kara directly asked the assistant to leave and let her tell Simmons. As a result, Kara, who had other thoughts, turned back to her room and called Luo Guang. It just so happened that she had another thing to ask Luo Guang. As for why she wanted to discuss it with Luo Guang, it was because she had basically no friends, only a large number of colleagues, and the matters involved were probably only understood by the other party. She said she had basically no friends because of Yan Zheng. She still had a friend with whom she could chat a little, Shirley Birkin. Because of Luo Guang's intervention and reminder, Shirley's body had changed, causing various things, such as Shirley's body began to grow. However, that was it. In the days that followed, the research institute responsible for this project still found nothing. Kara took the initiative to take on the task of research after she happened to know about this matter and saw Simmons' special attitude towards Shirley. Unlike others, she chose another way, becoming friends with Shirley first, and then observing and studying closely. The innocent Shirley didn't know that Kara approached her with other purposes, and she felt stupid, so she really regarded Kara as a friend. Back to the call between the two. In order to prevent breaking the rules, Luo Guang confirmed, "You know that according to the organization's regulations, this matter should be asked directly by the boss, and you are not in line with the rules." He didn't say the name of the organization or Simmons' name. "I have the right to know, don't forget that I am also involved in this matter." Kara knew this was a quibble, so she paused and said, "I just want to know the details, and I will tell Simmons later." Luo Guang didn't dwell on this issue, anyway, he had already recorded it. He said the matter, "That's it, so I think the organization should also be prepared in advance to avoid being infiltrated by the enemy." Kara looked like she was in control of the situation, and said, "Our organization has long been prepared to prevent parasites. Speaking of which, you also have a share of credit." Luo Guang's credit refers to the scanning gun, which greatly simplifies the detection process and is easier to popularize. He replied, "I know that the organization is ready to deal with parasites. But I mean all parties related to the organization, such as the government department." Kara was obviously not interested in these, or she was inexperienced, and she only thought about the problems of her own organization. Of course I mean those guys you mentioned." Even the most talented girl was at a loss when facing her own knowledge blind spots. Luo Guang didn't say much, and said, "Anyway, that's all. You can tell your boss, and remember to record my credit." "I know," Kara replied. Her own credit book is as thick as a small book, so there is no need to steal the credit from the other party. "Then I'm hanging up." After waking up in the middle of the night to do these things, Luo Guang just wanted to go back and hug Jill to continue sleeping. Wait, Kara stopped Luo Guang's actions, and realized that she had just spoken a little loudly. After looking around, she said, "I have another question to ask you." Go ahead. Luo Guang wondered what else the other party could talk about with him besides work. Kara sighed and said, "It's about the boss. He seems to have lost his appetite recently. I don't know what happened, so I want to ask you what you think." Luo Guang answered without any pause, "Isn't that just a single-minded disease? Simmons is not short of money, and he has power. There has been no trouble in the X organization recently. It can only be because of women." Kara didn't refute it right away, because according to the few words she collected and her understanding of Simmons, how could she not think of this with her smart brain? She just didn't give up. After a long silence, she asked, "Do you have a way to solve this problem? Do you think I dare to do this?" Luo Guang was speechless for a while. He would not wade into this muddy water. Kara, who was rejected, didn't know why. She had an idea for the first time. It would be great if she had someone absolutely loyal to her. "Okay, I won't bother you anymore." Since the other party couldn't help her solve the problem, there was nothing to say. She hung up the phone directly. She was a doer. As long as it was for Simmons's good, she would do something extraordinary, and the other party should be able to understand her. Meow, Happy New Year. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 450. As BSAA began to take action, Wesker got the report compiled from all parties and looked at it carefully. Diamond suit, diamond suit. How cautious, he commented. The first part is about some things related to Sanlian's penetration plan. Sanlian Company also received the B.S.A.A.'s anti-parasitic propaganda, and notified Sanlian Company of preventing parasite infiltration. This dealt a big blow to an otherwise very successful plan. The reason is very simple. Hunter, the head of the Travis family, was not parasitized at the first time and would definitely conduct a company-wide parasite test. Therefore, Wesker decided to temporarily postpone the plan to parasitize the head of the Travis family and first put the other Sanlian. The company's branches are all included. So overall the plan is still progressing. What follows is not good news. The governments of various countries' strict defense against parasites has caused a lot of trouble for his simultaneous global penetration plan. Several parasite infiltrations under Xela's command failed, and they also alerted the enemy, confirming the unknown conspiracy mentioned by BSAA from the side. In the end, she, who was responsible for coordinating this matter, could only suggest to Wesker to postpone the plan and focus on the African continent first. The idea of targeting the African continent means taking advantage of the poverty of the people here, poor official control, and slow flow of intelligence information to first turn a large number of Africans into hosts for the Plaka parasite and strengthen their fight. Troops, etc. Axela told Wesker the calculation results and said, according to calculations, as long as we capture the African continent, and then use it as a springboard, combined with the strength of the Triple Company, we can control the entire world. Wesker's plan to become a god has not changed, but the specific methods are quite different. Previously, he planned to use his special virus to select the chosen ones, lead the evolution of mankind, and make himself the new god of the new world. To be honest, it is to wipe out 99.69% of the human race, and then enslave the remaining people to build a new world together. It is a crazy plan that people don't know the reason for, and only makes people think it is a crazy plan. Now with the divine parasite, he is no different from an ordinary villain, wanting to rule and enslave the entire world, and from a social perspective become a god who can control all living beings at will. There is only one reason why he lost his ability to become the god of Superman and became arrogant, and that was Luo Guang's suppression of him over the years. Since the sworn enemy's goal is to eliminate the biohazard in the world, he will naturally go against it and spread the biohazard all over the world. At the same time, he also wanted to defeat that man in an upright manner. As long as he continues to do these things, he believes that the other party will naturally come to him and fight to the death with him. As for why Wesker didn't come immediately to fight Luo Guang, it wasn't that he didn't know Luo Guang's location, but that he felt he wasn't strong enough to defeat his mortal enemy, so he was still accumulating enough strength. How long will this take? Wesker was worried that it would take too long and make it difficult to realize the plan. Axela said, if the quality requirements for personnel are lowered a little, 2 weeks can meet the minimum requirements. Very good, just follow your plan. After Wesker confirmed the plan with the other party, he took the report and continued reading. Seeing that the other party did not blame her for not doing things well, Axela breathed a sigh of relief. Wesker's face showed a slightly solemn look, but it soon relaxed. According to the GIMZ personnel intelligence he had seen before, no one in the training ground could stop him from taking away Jack Mueller. Therefore, the other party's approach of hiding people in the base will not work. Unfortunately, the GIMZ headquarters no longer accepts training services, so he cannot blend into the crowd and sneak in to complete the task of abducting children. As long as he catches Jack, the other party will naturally be on guard and not dare to act rashly. As for how Wesker judged that Jack also had a certain importance in GIMZ, he saw this from what Wusong did for Jack at school. At least it can be proven that Caddy and Jack are not simple employees at GIMZ. He even had a guess that the two mother and son had an unusual relationship with Wusong and formed a new family. Wesker, who was originally weak in human emotions, was angered by Luo Guang, and felt various emotions such as sadness and pain, so now that he thought of this possibility, an inexplicable anger emerged from his heart. Others are not allowed to possess things he does not want. I'm going out for a while. I'll leave the infiltration plan to you. Without asking, Axela thought about what the other party was going out for, and said, why don't you leave such a small matter to me? Wesker showed his domineering attitude and said, do as I say. Axela looked aggrieved, as if she was sad that she couldn't help the other person. The people under her command would definitely be shocked when they see the strong woman with such an expression on her face. But Wesker couldn't let him get in touch with Jack. If Jack was really his son, he couldn't let go of this precious experimental material. Moreover, he recently felt that the other party was pushing the envelope a bit, and it was time to give it a good beating. After confirming that her beloved would not change her mind, Axela could only say silently, I understand. It's quiet at night. Although he couldn't blend into the crowd and enter the GIMZ training base, the outer wall's defense measures were useless to Wesker, who jumped directly from the woods. The figure that flashed by was captured by the surveillance camera, but the people in the security room did not sound the alarm, they just thought they saw it wrong. But after that, Wesker, who landed and ran, still attracted attention when he flashed in front of each camera. The people in the security room played the video in reverse and slowed down, and confirmed the figure of the intruder. Wusong left the bedroom, turned on the computer in standby, saw the intruder's picture uploaded by the security room, and immediately arranged things. The elite team was ready for battle and waited for orders. Jack and Caddy hid in the room and didn't come out. He gave Samus a piece of paper on the way, which wrote some arrangements for emergency use, and he was responsible for intercepting Wesker. Wesker had entered the office area and was looking for Jack's room. The security room was set up in the basement and needed to be entered through a secret door, so it was not discovered by Wesker. Because he didn't look for any basement, which didn't fit the living environment of a child like Jack. At the same time, the Bat Squad was discovered after the raid failed before, but this time he didn't hear the alarm and didn't alarm anyone, so he was a little surprised when he saw Wusong suddenly appearing on the stairs and blocking him. I didn't expect that I would be discovered, Wesker sneered. Why did you wake up? Can't you live well if you just sleep well? Talking trash and angering the enemy is also a way to learn from Luo Guang. Just as Wusong was about to speak, Wesker launched a surprise attack and punched him in the head. There was no record of Wusong's attack in the intelligence compiled by Axela, and the rumors were not reported to Wesker, so he used all his strength in this punch, which was probably enough to kill an elephant with one blow to the head. He didn't have time to play with ordinary people. Wusong's clone was originally remotely controlled, with a certain delay. Even if this delay is almost negligible in the eyes of ordinary people, it may be a one-step difference in the battle between masters, and people may fall to the ground. In addition, Wusong's clone has the same physical fitness, recovery and healing, induction and transmission of mental power, and the ability to create eternal toxins as the original body, but it does not have the commonly used skills such as controlling electrical energy and hardening armor. So under Luo Guang's control, the clone directly used 90% of his strength to punch back. The reason why he did not use all his strength was to be able to control it freely, otherwise the opponent would dodge sideways, and he would easily fly down or reveal a fatal flaw standing on the stairs. Humph, Wesker was full of confidence in facing everyone except Luo Guang, and he did not avoid it. The two had a real man's confrontation. Both sides' fists hit each other in the face. Wesker flew backwards and fell to the lobby on the first floor, but the damage from his back hitting the ground was not as good as the punch on his face. Gunshots followed. Wesker supported the ground with his hands, exerted force on his waist, and lifted his feet to roll backwards. Wusong predicted the opponent's evasion direction and hit the middle point and both sides. The .50 AE bullet used by the Black Snake Desert Eagle in his hand directly made a hole in Wesker's thigh. The bulletproof black windbreaker on his body was obviously unable to cope with such a powerful weapon. Wusong did not stop his pace when he fired, and the injured Wesker's actions were obviously not affected. Only 2 of the 7 bullets hit, and Wusong suppressed Wesker and shot him out of the office building and came to the square. At this time, Luo Guang had not noticed that Wesker had taken a step further, but he did not relax. He threw away the Desert Eagle with empty bullets and rushed towards the enemy. In the dormitory building not far away, snipers were scattered in various windows and balconies, observing and reporting the situation. These elite soldiers knew Wusong's strength, so they all carefully carried out the orders given by the boss before, and did not act rashly. At this time, seeing the enemy flying out of the office area, everyone couldn't help cheering, and seeing the boss directly throwing away the pistol, they were surprised until they saw the two fighting at an incomprehensible speed. When speed and dynamic vision are equally strong for both sides of the battle in their eyes is no different from the slowness of ordinary people. Jack and Caddy didn't know who the person was, they only knew that there was another enemy coming, and they didn't have any curiosity, so they just hid in the room and closed the doors and windows. Luo Guang didn't let them know who the enemy was, naturally because he didn't want Caddy to see Wesker, and worried that she would do irrational things because of her feelings for Wesker. This is also a measure to prevent Wesker from seeing the existence of Caddy and her son. After all, Jack is a hot commodity. This time, Luo Guang didn't take the opportunity of the enemy falling to the ground to taunt and anger the other party. As one gains, the other loses. His clone's overall strength is weaker than the original body, which means that Wesker may be stronger than the clone. Wesker stood up with a reaction that was beyond his expectation, and the 2 bullets also fell to the ground, and were all discharged from his body. Without saying a word, he raised his hand to block the straight punch, protecting his center line, and then raised his knee to push forward. Wusong blocked the knee strike, stepped back to create distance, and avoided Wesker's leg kick. Just now, both sides used 90% of their strength, and it can be said that they were evenly matched. Luo Guang, who controlled the clone, did not expect that after so many days, Wesker suddenly improved so much and was able to keep up with his speed and strength. Interesting. Is this what it means to be on the same mountain? These 2 moves successfully aroused Wesker's fighting spirit, and there seemed to be fire burning in his eyes. Wusong did not respond, and without giving him a breath, he chose to continue pressing forward. Wesker raised his hand to block or jab quickly, hitting Wusong's joints, preventing the opponent from exerting force, thus blocking the attack. Wusong stepped forward again, and was blocked by the same technique. He quickly stepped back a few steps and spoke for the first time, "Jeet Kune Do." This time it was Wesker's turn to act cold. He did not answer and began to attack actively. He raised his hand to pretend to punch, but in fact he was hitting from above, throwing a false punch to deceive the defense and cover the next attack. Because of the delay problem of controlling the clone, Luo Guang made a prediction and raised his arm to block, but the enemy took this opportunity to immediately step forward and kick sideways, directly breaking through his center line, kicking him over and falling backwards. This is because he is physically strong. If an ordinary person took this kick, he would be kicked through by Wesker directly. In order to avoid being chased, Luo Guang controlled his clone to roll backwards and away from the enemy. However, just as he stood up, Wesker had already arrived in front of Wusong. He did not kick with his legs, but used his waist and horse to rise from the ground, and punched out, aiming directly at the heart of Wusong, who had just stood up. Wusong retreated with his legs, and at the same time, he leaned back with his waist, and quickly followed with his hands, barely entangled the enemy's heavy punch to relieve the force. Wesker wanted to pull out his right hand, but was tightly entangled by Wusong, so his left fist was already on the attack line. Wusong did not choose to let go of Wesker. Luo Guang wanted to win back a point here. Then the opponent exerted force, got close to the enemy first, and hit the enemy's stomach directly with his high knee. Wesker's abdominal muscles were very hard, and his knees seemed to hit an iron plate. After that, he retreated again and distanced himself from Wesker again. Although there were wins and losses in these fights, Luo Guang knew that the clone he controlled would fall into a disadvantage sooner or later. It was a simple point. If he wanted to defend or dodge the enemy's attack, he had to predict in advance or be faster than the opponent, but the delay problem made him dare not do so, and he would be easily fooled by the fake move. The opponent's progress was indeed beyond his expectations. After all, the number of viruses he had fused before was much more than Wesker, and judging from Wesker's actions, the opponent had obviously learned martial arts and improved his fighting skills. Wesker would not give Wusong a chance to rest, and he chased after him and launched an attack. The two sides fought fist to fist, and each took a few steps back, with equal strength. Wusong took the opportunity of the opponent's retreat to get rid of the old and take in the new, and adjusted his posture. Wesker sneered, stepped forward to attack again, and used the speed of continuous punches to hit the power of inch punches. Wusong kept the center line, clapped his hands to block, and kept retreating, secretly keeping a distance from the enemy. Just when the opponent's punch was empty, Wusong stopped and swung a right back fist to hit the enemy's nose. Although Wesker's body was strengthened to be as hard as steel, the bridge of his nose was one of the weak points of the human body, and the pain made Wesker stumble back unconsciously. From this point of view, Wesker was not an evolved god. Luo Guang controlled his clone to chase him, but Wesker quickly adjusted and swung his right fist, but was dodged again. Wusong leaned over to dodge, and at the same time, he continuously attacked the enemy's ribs with his left and right fists. Wesker felt pain and counterattacked impatiently, but he was caught by him again. He immediately punched Wesker in the head with his back fist at the moment of defense. In terms of martial arts attainments, the enemy was far worse than him, and this was the way Luo Guang chose to win. Meow, Happy New Year meow.